What's up, Wiz? I had to turn you up a little bit. How you been, man?
Been better.
Really?
Yeah.
How's Melvin in prison? He has to play League of Legends.
Yeah,
I mean, there are worse curses than being required to play a video game for college money. Not to discount the suffering of playing League that often.
It's pretty sufferable, but you're right.
It's just like, it's kind of a first world problem. Like, God, this video game I have to play for college sucks.
Correct.
What have you been up to, man?
You know, just League, that's about it.
Yeah. And I assume it got so big you didn't really have time for Mordhau anymore? Or did you just get tired of the game as well?
No, I would kill to play Mordhau right now. But just a lack of time, pretty much.
Yeah, I feel that. I'm gonna turn down my game audio a little bit since we're doing this.
We'll say this though, ever since you've taken a step back, not that this is like directly correlated, but I would say the top 5 of NA Mordhau has never been so competitive, I would say.
Yeah, so tell me about that. What's happening? I've been so out of the loop.
I hear North has beaten Tempest a couple times, but that's kind of to be expected. They had to replace two of arguably the best players in NA Mordhau, and kind of adjusting to that. But Dark Star is really close to North. Uwu is pretty damn good strategically in Invasion. I hear Nemesis is good, but our first scrim against them is tomorrow, so I don't know much. But the top 5 is pretty contentious, which I think is a good thing. Like,
I would still say Tempest are a bit above everybody else, but the gap is significantly more narrow than when you were there.
Well, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. The other issue, though, is that the game has shown no real signs of, like, moving towards a competitive future outside of the players themselves improving. So
I think a 6v6 Invasion game mode would go a long way. I think in esports, players need to, like casual players or just non-competitors really, need to be able to play the same version of the game that the competitors are playing on. I think that's a huge part of.
Well, is it really fair to say that if competitive has been expanding?
well, depends on how you judge the expansion of competitive, in my opinion. Because I would argue that as far as the mid-tier scene, it's been contracting. We've seen less and less mid-tier teams as players either improve individually and then leave behind their mid-tier teams to move up. However, we have seen the expansion of more top-tier teams that are kind of, it's like, I think it is more healthy than it was when it was kind of just like Tempest, North, Legion, and then everybody else is behind. Because now there's like 5 or 6 teams at the top instead of just 3.
Because what I hear is that there's like tons of scrims every night, back-to-back scrims. Teams are just going at it. I would kill for that. I'm jealous.
It's true, but I think what he's trying to say is like there's 4 teams, maybe 5 that are relevant, and there's quite a few
3,
bad teams. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I wouldn't make the argument that he made, but there's basically a few good teams and quite a few really bad teams, and there's no teams that have, like, from my perspective, that are like close to the good teams, but are better than the bad teams. If that makes sense. Like the
gap is widening.
Middle class has shrunk.
Yeah, it's a great parallel. So you have like the top teams are still improving faster than the mid-tier teams, basically, even though they're already as good as they are, which is just kind of an unfortunate whatever. And I don't really think there's a clear way to fix that. I've dabbled in doing like a guide type thing, but there are some, like the apathy has been growing in the mid-tier scene on top of the fact that they're slowing in their whatever. So they're like, if a new player right now is like, wow, this is a cool game you're streaming, is there like a competitive scene or whatever, I can tell them yes, but then they'll inevitably ask, well, how would I like participate in that? And I don't have an answer. I just don't. I can say, like, go practice duels on a duel server until you can kill people, and then make an advantage.
I think that part's easy. That part's like, easier.
I don't know. I don't think I agree, because what team could you possibly join if you're brand new to comp that would actually be worth your time?
Killa, Void, Well, I mean, they're not going to join great teams and learn from the very top immediately.
Right, but do those teams have programs in place to teach those players? You know what I mean?
To me, the issue is not people who are new to the comp scene getting into a team. The issue is teaching low-tier teams and mid-tier teams how to play Invasion specifically. And it existed with Skirmish too, but just how to play Invasion, because that's the comp mode now. Like, even teams like Hydra don't, from what I've heard, they like haven't scrimmed Invasion very much and they don't like it. And a lot of people just think Invasion's a cheese fest. They don't recognize the strategic depth that's available. So I think like a good little 10-minute YouTube video or something explaining like very basic default defenses and default strategies would be helpful. But
speaking of, it seems that the community has stuck with the no rules.
Yeah, people eventually realize that basically what you've been saying is like the depth of the game goes up, and then there is enough counterplay to where once we have access to tuning variables like the spawn rates on ballistas and catapults and things like that, you can make it to where the cancer isn't as cancer. You know what I mean?
Well, the only thing I had an issue with ever was I think a good horse player on camp is like disproportionately strong. And I think that still might be the case, but we've just adapted by just basically running heavy spears and running 2 crossbows and just like not letting the horse live very long. But I think a good horseman is really strong on camp specifically, but that's the only map that I think I have really any concerns. The thing I love about Invasion is I think having builders in the mix really adds like just a massive depth to strategy, and I don't know. I really like having builders be involved.
The game really needs a ranked XVX mode so that the top players can become accessible to shitters if they climb. Yeah, I mean, the issue though is not the individual skill. The issue, like for instance, like queuing into a matchmaking where you find a team. It's more learning to play as a team with other players. I think people can teach themselves the mechanics kind of on their own, up to a point at least. But it's like the information about like specifically with Invasion, because it's so new, even the top players are still figuring it out. It's very difficult to justify an Invasion game mode for mid-tier teams. Like,
yeah, I agree with that. That's why I think we need like a ranked 6v6 Invasion so that up and coming players can play ranked and play the same version of the game that the competitive players will be playing, which is 6v6 Invasion.
I had mentioned it to Spook briefly. Their current focus is not on making a competitive mode. They're working on other stuff. I don't know what that other stuff is, but like that's not. We shouldn't be holding our breath for that, basically. Like,
I'm not sure why though. It would be incredibly easy. All they'd have to do is make like the ranked system that they already have, limit the server to 12 people, and just do like a ranked system for Invasion. I think that would be a smash hit too, because like this game retains a decent player base for Invasion and Frontline. Those are the most played. Like that's what the casuals play. So I think a lot of those players would love to play ranked Invasion.
Sure. The issue though is like it's difficult to justify competitive being the savior for the game. It's more a savior for us. Mod support is what really is the end game.
I disagree with that. I disagree. So ranked, the way they've done it, is only good for us, which is 1v1 and apparently 3v3 that they've been working on for a while. But if they make a game mode that's Invasion that is also ranked, then every single casual will be able to take part in that, you know, because they like the bigger game modes according to the numbers, right? So having a 6v6 Invasion game mode, I think, would be a big hit. I'm like pretty convinced for everyone.
Well, the devs are kind of split on that. Some of them think that it'd be a great idea, and some of them think it wouldn't. But at the end of the day, what they'll all agree on is that it's basically a gamble if they were to do that.
Do rank support, like for competitive scene, that sort of thing?
Like if they were to do 6v6 matchmaking for competitive Invasion or some shit like that.
Yeah, it's like, here's what I think though. The more things you can offer the player, yes, it is a gamble in the sense that it might not save the game, but more content is never going to hurt the game, even if it's just a reformatting of the content you already have. Like, just on its own. There are also some very, very fundamental issues with Mordhau, though, that go beyond what can be fixed with modes and stuff, like the fact that it's not fun to watch as a spectator because you have no idea what's happening.
I think that changes with
People
Invasion a little bit. Yeah. I think Invasion's a little different because I think you can watch what a team is doing in Invasion, and because the game is melee, it makes sense, right? So it's like, okay, they're building walls here to make this a stronger choke point to hold, and they're making this push. I think Invasion is actually an upgrade for spectators over Skirmish. Skirmish is just like watch really good players beat the shit out of each other, whereas
Yeah.
Invasion, it's like there's an extra layer of strategy.
It's better, but is it good? Is the question. Like
I like it, but
with-
it's hard to say because we're comp players.
Well, what I can say is like a great example. If I were to talk to Abby, she's outside the comp scene. She's outside like the major gaming sphere, but she'll enjoy watching like the Overwatch League because shooting a person that's bad with a gun is like a universal thing in our culture. Like everyone gets that's you shoot them, they die. But in this game, the universal language would be you hit them, they die. But that's not how this game works. So it's like you hit them, they parry, and then you get into this weird whatever the fuck, and then it's not intelligently expressed to the viewers like what that should look like.
I mean, I kind of disagree there. I don't think it gets any more simple than which one of these teams can kill each other with swords and axes first. Like I think that's not the problem viewer-wise, personally. I think better maps for Invasion would go a long way, which apparently they've been saying forever that these 2 new maps are almost completed. So hopefully those get out there soon. But
I don't
to
think,
me, it's
spectatorship is sort of a root issue. I'm not sure what our claim is here, but like Overwatch comes up, but then like take a look at MOBAs. Like, you're watching 20, sometimes 30 minutes of people right-clicking on minions.
yeah, it's super
How exciting
unintuitive.
is that? How
And
exciting is
yeah, yeah,
So
but
I don't think spectator. I feel like that comes with
player base.
Yes, exactly.
But then again, could you recommend this game to a new player right now?
Yes, of course. The combat is
Can I?
at least 50 hours of fun.
I do it every day. I tell people to stop playing League.
I feel
Play this
selfish
game.
when I recommend this game to people. I don't feel like I'm
It's
actually recommending a good
$30,
game.
and you'll get 50 to 100 hours out of it, even if you're a total noob. And so, even for a casual, I think this game's a good value. But to what I was saying earlier, I think about it this way, right? How many players play this game because the combat is cool and because it like satisfies that like hero fantasy where they get 3 kills when they're surrounded and they feel like, oh, that was awesome, right? How much incentive do those players currently have to like try to get better at the game and take it more competitively when the road that they have to go through to do that is so like convoluted and like disconnected from the game? Whereas in other games, it's like you can get ESEA on Counter-Strike and start hopping in or Face It. And Overwatch, there's a ranked system, and in every game, the ranked mode is the same as the one that the casuals play, right? So all I'm saying is, like, if we make a 6v6 Invasion game mode, which I don't think would be that difficult coding-wise, I mean, maybe I'm wrong and naive about that, but I think it would basically serve as a bridge between all of the casuals who play this game frontline in Invasion, and it would allow them to like experience what competitive players play and kind of like bridge that gap a little bit more. I think development time that is spent towards ranked 3v3s and 1v1s, that is wasted if the goal is to bring people into a competitive Mordhau, to me.
Yeah, it's like there's a good point that Ida made in the chat. He said that's why you have casters to help people understand what's going on, like when it comes to spectating, because we talked about how you need casual players to watch the game, right? So they at least understand what's going on a fundamental level. Like, okay, he swung his sword this way because he pressed that button. But then you need, as far as like team mechanics and making it digestible, you need good casters. Like it's the burden of the casters to explain what's going on in a way that interests people who maybe don't take the time to learn the comp, but are willing to have it briefly explained in a match.
Well, I think me and Yang will do a good job there. I'm not sure what the EU guys have, but
I don't know.
For me, it comes down to the game mode.
It's more in depth than that, though. Like if you need to be able to like call out specific strats and then mention why they did what they did and what the setup was and that sort of thing. Like people are not stupid to the point where they can't appreciate it if it's explained, but they are stupid enough to where they're not going to get it unless it is explained properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this issue's not about me, but
right,
hopefully we see more casters like myself. Like when I cast, I focus on like analysis and breaking it down so that even like mid-tier, low-tier comp players can like see what they're doing and understand it. But that is a valid point. But the fact is like not that many people watch the game, but at the same time, the viewership has been increasing. I mean, at the EU SKM finals, it was like almost 700 viewers, which is a big improvement over previous tourneys. But
Here's a hot take on the caster situation for you guys. I think all the casters suck.
have you heard me and Yang? Most
I've
people
heard,
seem to
I've heard,
look
I've
at
heard
us favorably.
Yang, and it's not that Yang is bad. It's just, I guess I don't know. I have that kind of expectation for there to be like the same kind of casting you get in something already established, like CS or something. I feel like
Yeah, those guys
until it
get
gets to
paid
that
though
point-
to
It's
like
true.
protect their craft, and
true,
this is new for
but-
us.
They started in a similar position. At least some of them did. Probably
Yeah.
just casting no-name games.
I know it's kind of like negative
I'm
Nancy,
just
but
wondering
on
where
the
those
spectrum
people are.
of the players that exist, I actually agree that Mordhau casting has been subpar all the way through because nobody has actually taken the time to look at what that's gonna accomplish.
If
Like-
we're being fair to casters, though, can we talk about how unfriendly skirmish is to casters? You get maybe 10 seconds as a analysis type caster. I have to squeeze in my thought in skirmish specifically, which invasion is what we're shifting to now, but there hasn't been any official invasion games yet. In skirmish, you get maybe 10 seconds to explain, oh, that's interesting, this is how they played it, this is what stuck out to me, this is what won them the round. And then it's back to the hype caster to say, oh, here's another big 1v3 or a big switch or something, you know, like, skirmish is very, very bad.
Well,
to-
see, I don't even think when I think about like, because that's my opinion. Like, all casters suck and have sucked, including myself. And so when I think of that, I don't really think about the analysis. I think that's the easy part, especially when you consider that pretty much everyone casting is more or less a comp player to some degree. I've just found that there's never any hype. I listen and people are just like they're trying, but it's just so like lame.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard. Like I'm not like discrediting people by saying, oh, you should just be able to fucking do this. But you know, it's just sad that there doesn't seem to be anyone out there.
Well,
Well,
people are trying.
You gotta build passion in the game and have excitement actually about the game first before there's ever gonna be any excitement from the casters. Like, when there's no prize pools for anything relevant, or they're just not enough to really get excited about, and the game itself, people aren't really enjoying playing it behind the scenes, that's gonna subconsciously play onto the emotions of the casters and the viewers, and it becomes less of an enjoyable experience. Like, when you have a game that everybody's playing and it's cool, but there's no hope to the future of the game because the developers aren't like putting out a roadmap that people can look forward to or whatever, it subconsciously plays on everything. There's just less excitement overall for everything. And I mean, that's kind of an unavoidable thing. It's like when you're playing a game that everybody is like, I don't know, Counter-Strike or League or whatever, there's like, regardless of the current state of the game, there's always this like silent optimism about the future of the game. And if there wasn't, then nobody would care, which is what happens in Mordhau. We don't even have any evidence that comp mode is ever going to come in the next, like, by the end of 2019. So it's very difficult for people to be
probably
like,
not. Absolutely not.
yeah, it's very difficult for people to be like, man, I'm so excited to come cast this match for a $400 per person prize pool at the end of it.
And
you know?
at the same time, too, I don't think better casters would even have a big impact on how the game does. I think most of all, like the first step I would make if I was the, whatever you want to call the director or whatever at Triturnion, I would be synchronizing the casual players' experience with the comp players. As I said, like a ranked 6v6 invasion. And then you would also want like a unranked 6v6 invasion for players to not have to feel like, oh, I suck, I'm just getting owned. They can play 6v6 invasion without having to worry about a rank and learn the game.
Right. And there's also the issue of, like, in the games we're talking about, in fact, the comp players are not the casters. That's actually better, because they're people who are good at public speaking, and people who understand the game and analyze it from an external perspective, instead of the people who are spending all their time practicing the game, the people who spend their time casting demos of other matches, and that sort of thing. Like, it's not
We've
ideal.
had to retrofit casters from players, basically.
Yeah. I'm one of the few people who I would say, even I suck, so it's not a great example, but I'm one of the few people who I could say is really invested in the scene, but also not a player. Skills is another one. But neither of us are really good at casting. So it's like, you need to find somehow people that are clearly in understanding of what it means to be a part of the scene and all the depth in it, that are also not players at the highest level, because they're on teams. So it's inherently, like, the game will never be big while the players are the casters. That's just like a community mentality, you know? Small scale stuff.
Fair enough.
And on top of that, we're never going to have people who are good enough to understand the game but not good enough to play at the highest level until there's actually a large enough player base for that to be, like, a wide enough skill gap, you know? Like, in those games, there's, like, tens of thousands of players who understand the game at the highest level, but only maybe 500 of them who play at the highest level. Does that make sense? Whereas in this game, it's like there's 500 players who even play at the highest level, and nobody else outside of that understands it.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a big thing too. Is like sort of educating people on the game. You know, like Doa. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Doa. He was here a few days ago. I was talking with him.
Doa, the Overwatch League caster?
Yep.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I know who that is.
He's an alumni. Anyhow, I didn't really get into the casting too much. I actually have to follow up with him, but he was saying like with Overwatch, when he stepped into that, it was kind of like they studied for a really long time. Like, you know, since Overwatch is so action packed, like how do you cast that? And so he said something along the lines of like they kind of let the action speak for itself, but they just like emphasized the really important moments. But anyhow, that's besides the point. The point I was making is that you know, it would be great if we could just get someone like Doa or like someone who's experienced in casting and then just toss them into Mordhau. But the problem is the game is way too difficult. And it's like, how are they going to know active parry? How are they going to know repost, parry into parry, parry and flinch, 1vx, like all this terminology. Like despite the game having relatively few mechanics and I guess you could say like abilities or items where, you know, that's prevalent in MOBAs. There's so much shit that you have to memorize that I feel like it'd just be impossible.
To be fair, though, I would actually argue that the things you're talking about are things that only players and not spectators should ever need to care about. So, while it would be good for casters to understand all of the terminology, in my opinion, a caster should never be calling out, wow, that was a really nice feint to parry, or that was a really nice parry to parry, like that sort of thing. That's not the stuff that the caster... It's kind of like you mentioned, let the action speak for itself. That's part of it. You don't need to call out the mechanical techniques that the players are using, because that's not what the people watching are going to care about anyway, right? Because we were talking about how you don't need an in-depth understanding of the game to enjoy spectating it, ideally. Particularly if it's something like Invasion, where you are utilizing different mechanics, where you have, like, dodge barrel, or whatever.
Well, so then what do you talk about then, if that's the case?
You'd be talking about
wow, that was a nice strike.
No, you wouldn't be talking about individual fights ever. You'd be talking about the gravity of the duel, where it is in the map, why it matters that fight needs to be won by either side, that sort of thing. Not how they're winning the duels. It's not about the how, it's about the why when it comes to spectators that are watching a high-level thing, but they're not high-level people themselves.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely casting is easier in Invasion because you can definitely focus on the strategy and macro part of it more than the melee fights. It's kind of like the melee fight happens, but essentially like the strategy and what the teams are actually doing is so it's contingent upon how the melee fight goes. And so I guess that's okay for viewers where it's like two teams just running each other and then one team kills the other. And then you can actually talk about other stuff like this guy's building this or he's going over here or...
And you could talk about broader terms, like, for example, if somebody has a really key switch in a fight that allows them to take out somebody and they are able to snowball off of it, it is kind of mechanics, but it's not mechanical nuance on the level of like which buttons were mashed at which time. It's more of a decision-making thing, and that's something that viewers can appreciate at that level. It's kind of like if you're watching... I come back to Overwatch because I watch a lot of the Overwatch League, but you can talk about... So, for example, let's say you have a Widowmaker that's trying to hold a lane. You don't say, wow, that was a really nice, like, flick, or whatever. You talk about, okay, so the Widow's holding this position in order to prevent the team from making this push on this side, or be able to call it out for the team, you know? You're talking about the why instead of the how, for the most part, and it's still just as interesting to viewers because they're more interested in the outcome of the fight rather than how the fight happens, generally speaking.
Yeah, so the thing is, though, is thus far in Mordhau competitive, it's been skirmish, right? And so basically there's no objective in skirmish, it's just team fight or even duels sometimes. And so like the best thing you can hope for is to have a good hype caster who picks up like, oh, this guy's flanked, he's gotten 3 back smacks, and like he hypes it up, and after the round is done and it's like in transition, I think it's good to have like someone who is like an analysis type where it's like, this team is doing this wrong, this is why they're getting snowballed, stuff like that. So like skirmish is like inherently not productive. for like good casting, in my opinion. I think Invasion will be a much better game mode because like there will be down times where it's like you can explain a strat or like an idea that one team's doing, and then once the push happens in like a big team fight, the hype caster has his time as well.
Yeah,
It's true.
the other thing that's really unfortunate is we actually did have a couple invasion matches that were played and casted, but the VODs were never saved to those, so it's as if they never happened. So we can't really talk about.
You know, that's one of my pet peeves. You know that?
That they weren't saved.
When people just don't save odds. Like, how does that even happen?
I don't want to say who it was, but it was not. I made a request and it was.
Was that a Venetus thing or like?
No, it was my group of people. The Mordhau Community League.
I just get tilted when
I-
that happens. Yeah, I think like, how did
listen
that
to me.
happen?
Listen to me. I would go as far as to say I'm actually as tilted as you are. I'm more frustrated because for me it was like all of the hard work I put into that thing culminated in this like playoffs that was really cool and I really enjoyed doing, and now it's just like gone to history. So
Well, that's why you got to record on top of stream.
yeah, I just didn't even have the hard drive space to record that many hours of Mordhau footage. But
Well, you're not really in it then, are you? Huh? If you don't have the hard drive.
yeah, let me just
space
invest
for
money
Mordhau.
into the Mordhau scene. That's a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. How about you use some of that Venetus budget I hear Skills brag about all the time?
Yeah, I have never heard him brag about having a good budget, but
What do you guys think is the pathway back? Like, what do you think has to happen for them to bring a lot of the players who bought the game back? Because like someone mentioned this idea, and other games have done it, but I hadn't really thought about it for Mordhau. Like, what if some of the new cosmetics they added were microtransactions, and the game goes free to play? Like instantly, that blows up the numbers and gets more people interested.
believe it or
And I
not,
think
oh,
that would
sorry.
be a good good decision for Mordhau, because it's hard for people to justify spending $30 on a game that they're not even sure what the future is like, you know? Whereas if they make it free to play, like everyone will see the combat and be like, that's worth a try. It's just a download, you know?
You want a
And-
simple answer? I've got the answer. It answers everything. I've
Agreed.
got all the knowledge you want. There's no one answer. That's the answer. The game needs everything, and so like I don't know. Frankly, like that's a good idea. But
Well,
there's also like
it's
a ton
easy.
of other good ideas.
It's easy to say everything, right? But in my opinion, one of the things that casual players, which are we agreed, or it seems like we agree, are the future of the game, right? You need casual players to be spectators. You need casual players to keep the player numbers up. You need all that stuff. The players that are already here, and a lot of players that have left because there was never mod support. So let me give you my little quick speech about this. I've given it a couple times, but basically, the thing that is the best about this game, in my opinion, is the combat. Closely followed by the cosmetics and the UI, but those aren't going to change much. Why don't we have the SDK be the focus? Because here's the thing. We have a fantastic combat system on the spectrum of what's been created for Melee Slasher. Obviously there's flaws, lots of people are frustrated, but as far as Melee Slasher has gone, there's never been a better combat system. Some people like Shiv better, but it's divisive, and they're in the minority. And unfortunately, this is just the modern option that most people would be interested in playing. Nobody's going to go back to Shiv for that. So take the good combat system and allow the community to pitch in and create good content in the form of maps and modes. There is so much passion from this community that has been demonstrated over and over and over to make content for this game, but they are being hindered in their ability to do so. And the only way you'd be able to enable that properly is if you can create an official SDK. And like I can personally think of a lot of different things that would be very, very cool from a modding perspective, but there have been plenty of games that have been able to survive for just a cult following for years just because they had mod support. Halo 3, Gary's mod, I don't know, Overwatch has even gotten one now that's breathed new life into the game. It's just like anytime you give the community an opportunity to express themselves, the game gets much better. Minecraft is a huge example. Just
I
like,
want Wiz to respond to that, but I think like mod support would be huge, but I don't think that's why they left. But I kind of
Well,
want to hear.
no,
your
I'm not. It might not be why they
Here's-
left, but it could be why they come back. But anyway, I'll
Well,
shut up. now.
here's what I would wonder and critique is that kind of thought process of why do players leave? Is that what the train of thought should be, rather than what makes people stay? Because there's a population of people that are still playing. I haven't checked the. I'll check it right now. I'm assuming it's like around
3,000.
3,000.
4,000, but yeah, it's around there.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Well, 24-hour peaks. I mean like that. So around like 5K is what it was today.
Is it still at 5K? Oh, well, that's better than I
I just
expected.
checked. Well, anyhow, so I just wonder if it would be more helpful to think like, okay, what's keeping these players in rather than what caused people to leave. And the reason I say that is because there's a lot of people that bought this game, right? But I don't know if we're able to say that, oh, people left because of this one reason. Like, I'm sure someone left because they got random by Yang in a pub. I'm sure some people left because of lack of SDK support. I'm sure some people left because it was a game where they expected one thing, but it turned out to be another thing. I'm sure some people left because they're just casuals, they got their money's worth. And I'm sure some people left for whatever other reason. There's a million different reasons.
Yeah, I agree that we can look at it. So I actually think there's three perspectives. We can talk about why did people leave, and we can talk about why are the people still here that are here. But in my opinion, that's kind of like talking about the past and the present, and what we really need to look at is the future. So not just why are people still here or why did they leave, but what can we do to bring people back, and what can we do to bring new people in. So if people were to see, wow, there's this melee slasher game that's really cool, but there's also this mod where it's like a full Star Wars battle and there's super detailed lightsaber fighting with like the Force and all this other stuff. Oh, and there's this other mod that does all this crazy stuff and whatever. Da, 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 da. Like, all I know, a lot of my friends personally left because there was no SDK, and they said, if an SDK ever comes out, let me know because I'll come back.
Well, so like, I think you're thinking of this game as like a Gary's mod, but I think games like this, the best future, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, is esports, right? Fostering like a competitive scene because the skill ceiling's already there, right? So fostering like a sense of people who want to get better, giving them the infrastructure to do that, aka a ranked game mode. And I think mod support would be awesome because Counter-Strike has mod support, and there's a lot of mini games based on Counter-Strike that people enjoy a lot, but that's not the main draw of the game, right? In my opinion, although we'll never know, the problem is that for your average casual player, their introduction to Mordhau was 64-player frontline, where it's a lot of cheese, it's a lot of randomness, and the maps are terrible, and the game mode is terrible. So all they got to see was bad maps, a bad game mode, but good combat. So for people who just wanted to buy a game and have fun with something completely new, those shitty maps and game mode will keep them occupied for what, like maybe 50 hours, maybe.
Right.
If we have better maps and a better game mode, I think that might do a lot. And I also think, like, it's cool that you can unlock any weapon you want to play with pretty early, but I think Chivalry actually had a better, like, quote-unquote progression system, where to get the Messer, you had to get, like, 25 kills with Longsword and then 50 kills with Bastard or Sword of War. Then you'd get the Messer. Like, something kind of like that, or just some basic progression system would be cool. Like, at this level, you unlock this helmet, you know, instead of just having it be all the gold economy, right? I think if you're going to have it be the gold economy, make the game go free to play and let people use microtransactions to fund the game to pay for cosmetics. And that makes more sense to me because probably more money will come in, more players will come in, and, you know, that just seems to be the best.
My issue with this, again, is just like all these ideas are good, right? But then it's like, how do we land on, okay, this is probably the primary thing that would bring people back?
Well, here's
like,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Because like, yes, people left because of the SK. Like, people leave for all sorts of reasons. People would come back for all sorts of reasons, right? But it's like, how can we sit here and then that's just why I kind of find this dialogue not particularly helpful, because it's like we're sitting here and we're like, well, I think that we need microtransactions, or like, if you want my personal opinion is that casuals leave because there's literally 4 maps in the game.
Yeah, and
right.
Most of them are bad.
Right, so there's 4 maps, so that's my opinion. It's like, well, I think there's a lack of content, and Rangwa is like, well, SDK would go a long way. And then Muff, you're like, well, it's all true. I don't see how any of it's not true. But like, how can we sit here and definitively say, like, that's the kind of point I'm getting at, is that the game needs everything, but the problem is that devs just can't do any of that. Well, rather, let me rephrase that. They can only do one of those things, realistically. And they can't do all of it. But in my eyes, all of that's needed.
Except that I do think the SDK, I know I keep going back to specifically the SDK, I think the SDK, if the devs had to pick one thing, will solve more problems at once than any other solution. That's why I keep going back to it. So
The problem with the SDK, Sorry. Go ahead.
We talked about how the casual players left the game because there were only 4 maps. That was the point Wizardish made. I have already seen a lot of potential from the community to make some decent maps, but the problem is there's a huge barrier to entry because you have to understand how to use Unreal Engine on at least a basic level in order to do that. If there was a good SDK that was designed, you could have all sorts of really well thought out maps that and we don't have to wait on the devs to do anything. Like, if they had to focus all their efforts on one thing, you can have, as far as different unique modes for competitive, you can make that with an SDK. Put it all on the players and have it be the players' responsibility to fix the game instead of the devs if the devs are having a hard time doing it themselves, you know? Like, put the tools out
Unfortunately,
there.
though, Rongwa, I think a lot of players want to play official maps, official game mode. Like, a lot of people would get a lot of fun out of the SDK, no doubt, and they would make some great mods and some good content. But I don't think a lot of that content would be enjoyed by everyone. I think a lot of players, as simplistic as it sounds, like, how many players play Counter-Strike and they never join a custom server with a custom game mode? They just play, you know, not duels, but like 1v1 maps, and then they play ranked, right? I think that would help a lot and would be really cool, but I don't see that as being the savior to bring casuals back. I think ultimately it has to be more content that's better, and it has to be, I think the game has to go free to play. I think if it goes free to play, this game would have like 30,000 players daily, 20,000 maybe.
I don't know if I understand the whole idea of a SDK bringing people back. To me, that seems
Yeah,
more
I know.
to me, it seems like no. To me, it seems more of a tool of retention.
Well,
Yeah, it's a quality of life.
Because how is Merox going to be like, okay, guys, we have this video promoting what we've done the past few months. We have a little video. By the way, this is happening. We have a video. It's going to show off the new maps. It's going to show off Invasion. It's going to show off Ranked. We're going to potentially do a free weekend. We're going to jumble all of this together. But if you have a SDK, is he really going to want to say, hey, come check out this Star Wars mod? Is he going to put that in the video? Like,
yeah.
to me, it doesn't seem like a mech. Well, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't. But to me, it just doesn't seem like the SDK is a mechanism to bring, well, not to bring people back in the mass. Okay, yes, like if you have a bunch of friends in your friend group who are like, hey, this would be really cool if we could play like a Mordhau MMO or something, yeah, it's going to bring back that pool of players. But in terms of like reaching new audiences and I guess catering towards the esports, to me it seems more like a mechanism for retention, which I'm not downplaying how useful an SDK would be in that regard. It's just like I don't see that like boosting numbers. I see that like stabilizing numbers. So to me that'd be like better in combination with some large content update or something or like a free weekend.
It's like oh, sorry, go ahead.
It'll be very brief. I was just going to say, like, I think the SDK is a great quality of life improvement once the game has like stabilized a bit and hopefully stabilize around 10,000, 20,000 players concurrent. I'm a big believer. I think if this game goes free to play and they make it to where you can buy gold with real money and use, like, you still would earn gold, but obviously they'd have to slow it down a little or just make it to where you can buy a lot of gold at once for like a relatively cheap price. Make it go free to play and make the cosmetics monetized. I think that satisfies pretty much everyone, and it basically solves most of the problem. I mean, at the end of the day, they still have to make more content and they have to do it quicker, but I think with more players spending a little bit of money on cosmetics, kind of becomes easier to do that maybe.
Maybe that's my issue, is I've given up hope on the devs creating quality content at a fast rate. So I think...
Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, it probably won't happen.
So to me, I guess the SDK isn't the best answer, but it's the next best answer, is where I'm coming from. So it's
but
like,
if the game is free to play, though... Sorry, I won't speak long again, but if the game is free to play, though, there's going to be so many players who, like, download it because it looks awesome and give it a shot, and a decent portion of those players will probably find a game that they want to play quite often and will stay, and then a lot of those players will be like, okay, I'll probably play this like once a week or something. And then, but the great thing about free to play is like the amount of people who are always finding out about it is kind of high, right? Because there's no barrier to entry. It just guarantees that there will be a constant inflow of people who are like, oh, this game looks sick.
Right, but then like once they get here, I guess in a hypothetical world where the game has 12 fantastic maps, a comp game mode, and all the other quality of life improvements, then yes, that is the idea. But I just don't see the devs doing that. So maybe it's the pessimist in me, I don't know.
Well, I think they would actually make more money, and here's why, right? So everyone who was going to buy Mordhau with the very limited, piss-poor marketing they've done, that's another thing we haven't talked about. Their marketing has been almost non-existent. And this game is so easy to market because of how unique it is. But anyways, back to what I was saying. Shit, I actually forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah. So if it's free to play, basically there's no barrier to entry. So many players will pick it up and play, and nobody really cares about cosmetic microtransactions. It's just a good trade-off for like content and a bigger player base, basically. And I just think that alone would save the game. But I don't know if they'll do it. Oh, I just remember my point. So yeah, so the people who were going to buy this game, most of the people already bought this game, I would say. Like, they've made the majority of the money they're ever going to make off of sales in the first month or 2 months, in my opinion, right? Like, they'll get sales here and there. It'll always sell a little bit, but their big bulk of sales has already happened. So now, if they transition into, like, a free-to-play model, they'll get a lot of smaller purchases rather than people dropping 30 for the game, right? I also think if they go free to play, it makes sense to give a bonus to people who've been playing the game before it went free to play. You know, like maybe making them have a constant buff to how much gold they earn to where it stays the same, and then everyone else gets a bit of a reduction so that they're incentivized to buy gold, or even just give them like a lump sum of gold for cosmetics too. And I just think that would offer a very bright future for the game. Even if the current rate of content is the same, that alone would breathe life into the game for another year or 2 years.
Just microtransactions and free to play.
Yes, because this game
with the same maps and modes we have now.
Yeah, because it's inherently marketable because of how unique it is. No doubt it needs content. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying free to play would mitigate a lot of the issues. But I kind of want to hear Wiz's take on it because I feel like we're kind of dominating.
Okay.
Well, the devs' attitude is that there is marketing, or there was, but that's just because they think of marketing in a different way.
Yeah, a YouTube trailer.
Yeah, well, YouTube and the streamers and stuff, but I don't know, if I were to summarize their overall attitude, I mean, here's the thing, right? They made all their sales, and so Marox is still taking his time to work on this game when he's on like some shitty GTX 560 megabit internet. Just like, he could fuck off for the rest of his life, you know? But he's still like working. He's still working on the game. There's like, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff we don't know that they, I guess, internally will have to sort out. But their sort of attitude is that they weren't ready for the success, and so because of that, they're basically kind of happy with what the game has gotten, and they think they have time on their side. Okay, that's like the best way to summarize what
they don't, though. Man, it's so wrong.
That's what they think. They have time on their side. But anyway, boys, I wanted to talk about like comp stuff, and this is gonna be like an endless loop of us saying like, this would be nice, and
sure,
that would be nice, and this is gonna be great. At the end of the day, Marox is the one that has the final say on anything, and so yeah, I mean, I have some more I could say, but I probably
what would you want to talk about in the comp scene?
Well, you know what? I have a perfect transition. So, Feitoria and Castella coming out soon. I was curious about... so, we obviously have 4 maps. Game was in development for like 5 years, by the way. 4 maps, huh? Anyway. So, we have these 2 new maps coming, both of which are bigger than any existing frontline map. So, I was just wondering, like, how that's going to change things in the comp scene with, like, in terms of, are bans going to be useful now? Is it going to be like CS where teams are just good at certain maps and like they just auto ban some maps?
Yes.
You know, like a certain team is just known for being really good Dust 2 team, but they just like perma ban nuke.
That's already the case. I can tell you in the current comp scene, there are teams that don't play camp at all. There are teams that are like specialists on Taiga. That is already very much the case.
Yeah, the thing that I'm interested to see though is like, one of the things that's very unique about Mordhau, from what I've seen, is that the objectives on every map are different. Whereas, unlike Counter-Strike, for example, it's always the 2 bombs mentality, right? It's always like what you're trying to accomplish. Whereas in this, it's like, all right, we gotta kill a bunch of peasants at once, or sometimes it's like, okay, we got to break down these barricades and burn. Like the objective distribution as well as what you're actually doing can be similar. Like generally it's like throw this here or hit this thing or kill this thing. But the way, like the compression of the objectives changes map to map, and I'm curious to see, we won't know until we see them, but I'm curious to see how these maps play out in that regard. Like, I don't know, there may come a point that maps are banned because some teams are specialists, but in my opinion, the map bans right now are based around who thinks what is the most cancer, not who is the best on what map. It's like, we're banning for survival so we don't like die to cheese, instead of banning because we really have a solid strat on a certain map. So like, I know in Darkstar's case we talked about we would always want to ban camp whenever possible because we just can't stand how annoying harshes are, right? It's like a way of surviving the shitty mechanics in the game rather than, man, I'm really good on this particular map. I want to show off my team's ability here.
See, that's interesting because in the Mordhau Community League weekend, our whole idea behind bans was like just get us a grad. So we would try our best to like understand what the other team was gonna go for, and then we would just ban like based off of like what's gonna get us grad. Now, unfortunately, if they just ban grad, it's like, well, they were just fucked. But part of what happened back then, those few weeks ago, it might be months now, I don't even know. But we didn't know anything. We didn't know any of the maps, so we were just like, fucking ban any map that gets us grad, and if they just ban grad, then we just literally flip a coin, and we'll just play whatever map. Because we didn't know anything. But, so, going back to the point, I wonder if, I don't know, I guess I'm wondering like what maps people will choose to learn. Because one thing that strikes me is, you say you don't like playing on camp. Camp is probably the most melee-centric map. Maybe grad is more.
That's a big asterisk with horses, though, because it's the
that's
most melee-centric, but then there's like the big shit stand in the middle of it, you know? It's like,
right, that's why I was saying maybe grad. But I'm just surprised that like, yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised that camp is not played more.
I would actually clarify and say camp is the most team fight centric, but Taiga is actually the most melee centric. Because on Taiga, there's less use of siege and horses than on the other two maps combined. Like, or significantly less, I shouldn't say combined. But like, on Grad, it's all about or not on Grad, on Taiga, it's all about individual strategies instead of like one-shot mechanics. There is the ballista
well, right,
on barrels.
The way I view Taiga is like, the way I view that map is literally like, how do we not fight in melee? At least I haven't played, right? But you know, those last few weeks and the weeks after that tournament, the vibe that I got from that map was literally like, how do we avoid the engagement? How do we fucking dodge barrel, get the objective within 5 seconds?
That's what Uwu does too.
Yeah.
There are some teams, though, that have, I don't want to say anything about what we've specifically done, but we've found ways to optimize the map in ways where we force engagements where possible, and then win them, instead of trying to avoid engagements. I think there are multiple ways to play each map than what was just discovered in the weekend.
Well, true. The point I was making is, like, that's something you could do in Taiga, you know, where you, like, run around and just, like, be annoying, getting objective. But I meant more, like, on camp, at least. I don't really see that as being possible. You basically have to fight.
Right. It's the most team fight centric for sure. Like you're gonna but it's almost like frontline comp was, where you know when the cart is being pushed, you have to make one coordinated push to the cart and then win the fight and get whatever leverage you're given, or like reap the rewards of your team fight, win or loss. Which it's the most conventional when you could compare it to something like the Overwatch payload game mode, or Team Fortress 2 payload or whatever. Because funny enough, even though this game is melee, the ranges at which the engagements play out is actually quite similar, because in both those games, with the exception being snipers, obviously, most of the engagements are pretty close range, because there's lots of high spread on the weapons and things like that.
So you said that Fatoria and Castello are coming soon, Wiz, and obviously you're not a dev, so you don't know when, but do you think it's good to have so many maps for a game mode like Invasion? So like going back to what your original point was before we kind of like sidetracked, do you think, like, is what you're saying basically going to be that teams will pick 3 maps to specialize and to just hope to God that, say, Camp and Fatoria don't make it through? Like, is that what you're saying? Or do you think the meta will be every team will know a rough understanding of all the maps? Because, like,
Yeah,
The way
no,
it's-
I was thinking like teams are gonna have to specialize, especially since Castello and Feitoria are bigger than any of the existing maps. It's gonna be. I mean, I think you would agree that all the existing maps, like, there's still undiscovered stuff, like a lot of undiscovered stuff, and people have been going at it for quite a while now, like a few weeks.
Yeah.
So and it's gonna change too, right? It's gonna change with balance changes, and so I don't know. I guess like I'm just curious to see what. My point was more like I'm curious to see how teams will choose like what maps they practice. Because it's been at least my expectations. It's been different than what I would expect so far.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, what other games have comp scenes where you ban maps? Just so I know, because I might be unaware of some. I know Counter Strike is a big one.
Counter Strike.
Call of
Overwatch,
Duty.
there are assigned maps on rotation. They don't ban anything.
I think HOTS, but that game is like dead now. So.
They ban on Call of Duty as well.
Yeah, Call of Duty Esports is a real banger.
They ban on Halo.
The other thing I was going to talk about though is the way Overwatch avoids the whole ban meta and which maps to specialize in is they don't leave it up to the players. They say, all right, for the next 4 weeks of the 16-week league, these are the 5 maps we're playing. So learn these, and they just tell you. And then
that's
the
actually
next period,
kind of. I like that.
and then the next
I think
period
I
of
like
time, they
that.
say, all right, these are the maps we're playing for this period of time. So it doesn't become, and they also are played in the same order for every match as well. So they're like, all right, you play this map first, this map second, this map third, and then it's just like set. That's kind of what we did in the community league. Was we basically just RNG selected the maps we played for like that section, and then move it each week is what we did. And obviously you could come up with different sections at a time, but it's almost like then teams know which maps they should be specializing in, so there's no surprises, and it's also not like up to which maps are banned right before the match so that you didn't know what's going to happen. You can kind of prepare specifically, but at the same time you do end up having to learn all the maps, so I guess that could be considered a downside. I don't know.
Maybe I'm biased, but there's something I like about Mordhau and Chivalry where it's the champ duel thing. Like I kind of like it to an extent that like this team won the champion duel, so they get to pick. But I might be biased because there's only like 2 duelists in the game that can beat our duelists. But I don't know. There's something unique and cool about that to me. But if the league decides that like for this season we're doing these maps, I'd be okay with it. I think that's a better alternative than just having a pick ban system.
I didn't like it for skirmish, just because like it basically guaranteed Pit or Mountain Peak was in the rotation, and those 2 maps are like Archer Havens, so it's kind of aids. But I don't know. I think I like either system. To me, I just like the idea of like I don't know. It's just to me, it's so cool that like you can identify a team like yeah they're good at that map, but they just like permaban that map. I just think that's cool that like teams can have an identity based off of. I don't know, that sounds really political.
And the very best team will be the team that's good on every map, right? Like in
Theoretically.
CS:GO, Astralis is amazing, and they're a 7-map team. You know, they don't have a consistent ban.
Right. That's true. So yeah, I mean like the ideal is to be good at every map. But then again, it's like use your bans wisely. Like there's always going to be bans unless the system changes, I guess. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of a cool thing with those maps coming up. It's going to be interesting. Well, yeah, I don't know. Those maps themselves are going to be like they're going to be so fucking big, man. Like and the other thing is bigger better?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Depends.
I don't know.
Chivalry maps were pretty huge, but they were very linear. They were not as like wide, you know? Like Dark Forest is a massive map, but it's like kind of like a line. If you think about it, it's not that wide, it's just really long. And I think that is more optimized for team objective because it still provides like you had the cart pushing, then you had the sluice, then you had to kill the peasants or the royalty members or whatever. I thought that was really cool. So I hope these new maps they're less like camp and more like Dark Forest, where it's like the objectives go in a linear fashion, and the maps like each part of the map is designed to be a smaller map of one objective. You know, like
Yeah,
I hope that's
I
the route
agree.
they took.
So let me ask you two something.
Mhm.
Can you go through like the list and just tell me, like which teams like which maps? Like if you had to pair a map with the team, Like for Tempest, it's Grad, obviously.
Okay, well, for Darkstar, it's also Grad. For Uwu, it's Taiga. For... that's about all I know, to be completely honest with you. I don't know if North has a preference. I haven't talked to them recently since they've been...
Well,
perfecting
from
their
what I've
recently.
seen, North prefers Camp.
Do they? Okay.
From what I've seen.
That makes sense
I
to
don't
me
know.
because it's the closest to Skirmish, which is where they were very dominant, so...
Right.
makes
Well,
sense.
anyhow, the point I wanted to make with this is, like, there's no Dark Forest of Mordhau.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate.
Well, and that's why I was also wondering with these maps coming out, I wonder if one of them has, again, we really don't know just because we haven't fucking seen the maps, but with 2 maps coming out, there definitely is potential that one of them is just really sick and becomes Dark Forest. But I just find it interesting that there is no Dark Forest. And I think, I don't know, I would say that's good. I think it's a good thing, in my opinion. There's no Dark Forest.
I want Stones Hill. I would. It would be a wet dream if I woke up and they're like, "Yeah, we partnered
Well,
with Torn Banner, and here's Stones Hill." I'd be like,
I mean,
Cal's
it's
not good.
basically Grad minus the cart, right?
Yeah, but it's nowhere close to as good, in my opinion. Like the way they did the King on Stones Hill is way better than Grad. Like the whole, I know it's being patched out, but the whole fall damage on the King just makes like, if a team is willing to do the cheese with the commander on Grad, like it just makes it so much less like. I don't want to say less skill based, but it's a game of tag and it's kind of annoying. And it's just like
I
not
like
fun
it.
for spectators.
I love it. I think it's. I don't know. I just like the idea that you have to basically you can force the king to drop, but at the same time, like you have to have people on the bottom to receive him.
Right, but
And-
here's the thing, right? Let me ask you something, right? So if a team kills the warden and you're the attackers, how can you ever win versus the commander? Because if you leave one guy on bottom, instantly you're 5v6. The commander is like a super player. He's got a very fast maul that can combo, and he's got a ton of HP, and he's taller, so he can get over parries a bit, and his kicks are longer. So the king is just like, if you have a good player on the commander, he's hard to kill. So like if the no fall damage thing stays, which I hear it's not going to, thank God.
No, it's getting patched up.
How can teams of roughly equal skill ever push that tower and win? Because you will be at most a man down, and if you want to capitalize on the king dropping, you actually want like 2 players, because the king's health is so high that like if he drops, you can time the drop well and you can smack him before he lands, and then you might get a second smack with an Xe, maybe a third if you like do a nice feint or something. But after that, any good player that's like competitively relevant, that's it. You get 2, maybe 3 hits, right? So you need to have like 2 people.
That's the thing about Grad, at least the second objective, is that, in my opinion, numbers don't really matter. Just because of how the layout is of the second objective. You know, like there's so many points where it's like you can only be in a duel, or you can only be in a 2v2. And so like even if you have 5 guys in a tower, that doesn't necessarily mean there's 5 people ready to. That doesn't necessarily mean you could 5v1 someone. You know what I mean? It's like
I know, yeah, I know.
that to me. That was like that's why I was so lured into Grad initially when Invasion came out, is because like on that second objective, just because you have numbers doesn't really mean you have numbers. But I see what you're saying. I don't know. I just like the whole drop strat because it really emphasizes rotations and communication. And to me, I just like that over like kind of just bashing your head in with melee.
Well, you haven't played Grad, I don't think, recently on Invasion, right? It's been a while.
I did like a few nights ago, but honestly, it was against. I don't want BM, but I mean it wasn't much of a match, you know. So
Yeah. Well, like what a lot of teams like to do, and what seems to be strong, is like. So I'm of the mindset that like it's not really worth practicing a strat that's going to be patched out. So like practicing the king jumping off is worthless to me, and for Darkstar to do. So like we have like an alternate idea of how to defend the king, and I think it makes for better gameplay, because basically you can use builders to slow down and make your area more defensible, but still, if they win one team fight, you have to have a fallback plan for rotations. And I think the second objective on Grad is like a it's actually well designed in my opinion. It's one of the few objectives in Invasion game mode as is that I think is well designed because you have to be good at rotation if the warden's still alive. Like there's that one ladder that you have to use for rotation. So like teams will start to orient their warden defense around the ladder so they can send people up and down really quickly. So I don't think the King drop strat needs to be there to emphasize rotation. I think Grad is already a very communication and rotation heavy map, and that's why I like it a lot, right? So I just think that, like, say we were to play against the current day Tempest, right? On paper, Darkstar and Tempest, as is, are like pretty very close mechanically. So if we were to try to push the tower and they have all 6 of their people defending the commander because we've already killed the warden, there's almost never a way we can win because the warden or the commander himself is really sick, right? So you're at a disadvantage because you have one guy, maybe 2, depending on the situation, sitting down below to counter the drop. And say you're on equal footing with them mechanically, how can you ever win? You have to basically win a disadvantaged position. The only real counter argument I see is that if you're holed up in one of the towers, that like it's a pretty confined area, so you can't really use your numbers to full effect. But
Yeah, no, I mean I don't mind it being. I think the map is pretty much still the same without the King drop being there or not. Actually, the reason they're removing it is not because of balance, just because it looks funny,
That doesn't make
which
any
is
sense.
true. It does look funny.
That's counterintuitive.
Why is that?
Well, everybody in the game takes fall damage, so why would the commander not all of a sudden? That's just, it
Well,
goes against logic by default.
Everyone in the game can go to the basement in the upper level. Why can't the King and Commander do that?
That is also intuitive, because for all the times we played Frontline for hundreds of hours, we understood it was a rule that the commander and the warden stayed in their little areas, right? And it also makes sense from a map design like the objective can't just run out of the map. Like that doesn't make sense. But fall damage being compared to the bounds in which an objective-based character can go, I don't think are directly comparable. I think fall damage is significantly less. Like it doesn't make sense at all. Like since when did humans not die from falling off a building? You know?
I guess. I don't know. I just, if we're looking at consistency, it's like why does the Commander and Warden get these like unflinchable weapons? I don't know. I guess I just don't really see your point.
My point being, that's like not something that would ever be apparently obvious unless somebody went out of their way to test it and then exploit it. Unlike the weapon. Like if you get hit by the weapon, you instantly know, okay, they don't flinch. You know, it's like any sort of information that is going to be used for building strategy should be immediately apparent, or at least not that far of a reach outside of the realm of what would normally be possible.
Fair enough. I mean, anyhow, one way or another, it's like whether that mechanic stays or not, which it isn't. I think the map. I think it's the most balanced map. What's your guys' take on that?
Grad,
Yep.
I think it's the map that has the best mix of strategy and mechanical skill being viable. Like I think Taiga, a really good strategical team like Uwu, can make up for the fact that they're like decent mechanically but not top tier at all because they have really good strategies. So I think both are interesting. I like both. But yeah, I think Grad's probably the best invasion map.
First objective is also nice. I like the idea that it's definitely very, very hard to defend. But you know, with that in mind, like if you can put up a good defense on that first objective, it does you wonders for the second objective in terms of time. I don't know. 2 objectives though is a bit short. I don't know how FCAL was kind of like not like that part about it, how it's only 2 objectives.
I think and I know the Warden is not supposed to be as defendable as the Commander, but I wouldn't mind some small changes to the Warden's spot to make it like a little easier to defend, because in almost every game the Warden dies, and I don't think that's because teams are necessarily playing it wrong. I just think there's really no way to like have a good defense with the Warden. Like you can waste time surely, but the Warden is like pretty indefensible. Like he's gonna die at some point.
I always thought since Invasion release, like on paper, Warden would be the most defensible, and I still think that's true. But I mean, like you said, teams have not shown that so far. But on paper, so what? I guess I'm leaking strats, but I'm sure everyone else has thought about it. So you have long hall and you have stairs, right? Those are like the main 2 points attackers come into, right? You guys know what I'm talking about?
On
Yes.
yeah.
The long hall that's connected to basement, and
Yeah.
then stairs. Yep. So if you just wall those places off, right? Then you, in terms of walls, you've essentially walled everything off. Obviously, you can still come through well, but that's why you just have someone sit on well. You can have commander or
And you can have the
warden.
flap open thing, so people have to
Right,
mental and then ragdoll them.
Yep, that's what I mean. And then ladder, that can just be guarded by someone on surface level, right? But anyhow, I've always thought like, if a team were to do it correctly and cycle through smokes correctly, how would you ever be able to kill warden if you just have a builder set up at those walls and you're just constantly smoking the walls?
Are there ammo boxes easily accessible from those positions if you have the wall barricading you there?
No, but that's what I mean by like cycling smokes and cycling spawns. Essentially, like, you can drop smokes for the warden and just have him cycle between them so they don't despawn, or you can just simply have someone on the surface do that. You can have someone die very quickly. Although I guess that's probably different with spawns now. I heard they were reverting that though, so I don't know. But you know, back when spawns were instant, you know, you could just instantly die, grab some smoke pots, and get down there. So I don't know. I've always thought on paper warden should theoretically be impossible to kill, but it's really hard to well, from what I've seen at least in Tempest, it's really hard to get the building part of it down because you have to be very quick about it. You have to, everyone has to know what they're doing, like who has the smokes, who's gonna build this, etc., etc.
Problem with the warden though is that there's so many entrances, right? There's like 4 that I can think of that the people can get to. Whereas when you're defending the commander, oh yeah, and the other problem is that you don't have line of sight for a lot of that time. And basically, what happens is like with the commander, at least you can see where they're coming from, and you can kind of think about how to counter their push, like however they're deciding to push. But with warden, there's just like multiple angles they can come from, and you can only have so many builder charges, you know. And I don't know, you may be right. It could be a situation where Invasion's still pretty new, and there's only a few teams that really dedicate themselves to like optimizing their strategies to the fullest. So maybe we'll see like more innovation on the warden part of the map. But I think the commander is more defensible in the current meta. But
I saw something interesting. I was just spectating a scrim one day, and our academy on Warden, I think they ran like 6 daggers. They just like ran at the Warden and just shanked him. It was a sight to see. Is that like something other teams do?
Is that the highest DPS? Because no, the other teams aren't doing that. But I know it's a 3-shot to kill stab on level 3 chest by default.
I don't know what the highest DPS is. You know, like if you were to ask me what to use, you probably know my answer. I'll just tell you Greatsword. So I don't really know what the optimal weapon
For
is.
DPS, great sign.
Well, I feel like, I don't know. Can we really? How do you measure DPS?
The
Just by
damage
sheer
on an
damage?
attack based on the amount of time between attacks. So it'd just be like a division.
Well, yeah. I mean, but is that exactly how you? Is that how you define DPS when you talk about it?
Damage per second is literally how much damage can you output per second, and that's the literal
I know.
definition. But it depends.
I mean, do you use it in that sense?
Well, I don't think anybody's ever tried to DPS the raid boss in a Mordhau like scrim. Like that's not really the style that people go for. It's typically survivability and that sort of thing. And daggers to me feel very unwieldy to use, so it would make sense to try to.
Well, I was just wondering, like, what's the meta to kill Warden? What's the weapon meta? War Axe probably for the walls.
People don't really go for specific weapons to deal with specifically the bosses. Like there's people don't get that specific. It's just you use whatever loadouts you would normally use to win the fight, and then once you're there, if you've won the fight, you can snowball on top of the commander with whatever weapons you're using.
Well, so my philosophy, and we actually did this a few nights ago. My philosophy is you get the okay, let's just use commander for example. you are able to outmaneuver him and essentially trap him. So you wipe his team, and then I don't know, you're 3v1, 4v1 or whatever. My philosophy is that you want a weapon composition where, like, you know, most of these fights you're not gonna be able to outmaneuver. Like, you're never gonna be able to get yourself in that situation, like, the majority of the time, right? Like, it's very hard. It's very rare that you ever get yourself into a situation where it's like 4 of you versus the king. So my philosophy has always been like, weaponize around that one opportunity, so that when you get that opportunity, it's just you just win.
And are you of the opinion that the weapon choice is the deciding factor in if he dies or not, instead of the snowball effect?
Well, here's what I think. I think if you, let's just say you have the stand, okay, so you have a bunch of great swords and spears, well, I guess halberds. If you have that, okay, let's say you catch him out. You probably don't kill him. You probably chunk him for a lot, like at least 50, maybe even 75, right? But you don't kill him. And so that's a lot, but to me, I've always just thought it's better if you get it in one push. And so I think that the weapon difference would matter there. Where it's like, if you have a maul, well, maul is probably not ideal. If you have a bunch of evening stars or war axes, then you can get them in that one push.
Because of the weapon? Well, I guess so, but to me, logically, not that I'm anywhere on the level of you as far as the mechanics go, but just to me what makes sense is if you win the team fight but lose 2 guys because they're using weapons they were uncomfortable with, or I guess you could have them practice beforehand with those weapons, but like if you win the fight with 4 guys because they use weapons that they plan to use to DPS the guy, or they win the fight with 6 guys because they use the weapons to win the fight, I would put more money on the 6 guys that are using whatever weapons over the 4 who are using DPS weapons.
So you're considering weaponization around winning the actual fight before the king, right?
Yes.
See, that's what I originally thought too. Like, when Invasion came out, I was like, my first thought process was like, okay, guys, fucking 6 mauls on the second objective. But then I was like, wait, we actually have to kill his teammates before we get to the king. And so then I kind of backtracked. I was like, well, yeah, 6 mauls is probably not smart. But then again, now I'm kind of more aligned with the thought process that, again, when you look at Grad, the weapon compositions that you're going to be running are not going to be traditional, I think, at least idealistically, like when you compare it to Skirmish. In Skirmish, for example, it's like, why do we do triple greatsword, triple spear? Well, it's just range, because in like a pure melee engagement that's relatively open, it's just like range is literally the best stat you can have. But on Grad, when again you have these like choke points where you can only ever commit 1 or 2 people to a choke point, and it's a relatively close quarter combat map, I feel like that changes a lot. And so I don't think there's any harm actually in running like Evening Stars or even fucking 6 mauls, because that range stat isn't really useful on Grad. At least that's what I've theorized. Of course, haven't really played enough, haven't watched enough to know that, but that's just kind of how I reason through it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess the question becomes, like, does any of this even matter? Because there's other stuff that teams don't even have the... It's like, there's even more inconsistency in the comp scene that's just so silly. For instance, depending on the server provider you use to host your servers, the more expensive server providers allow for a more detailed server config, and some of the settings that are used in the competitive version of Invasion aren't even available to set up on the cheaper server providers. So it's like, if the expectation is to have ballistas on a 3-minute respawn timer, but they're only available to be respawned on a 30-second timer in an actual thing, that can pretty drastically change the way you play the map. But yet, it's literally like you have to ask around and figure out which server provider uses the right configs that you can set up your server the correct way to then practice for the comp mode that isn't really even a comp mode because it's really jank and it's just set up by an arbitrary rule set that we came up with. It's like, all of this feels a bit silly.
How did that come about, the different server providers?
You tell me, dude. I'm not the guy who runs them. But it's just like, the fact that we're that far back, it's just that's the sort of thing that makes me even have a hard time taking these sorts of conversations seriously all the way through. It's like, we're optimizing for a mode where we don't even have a complete, clear understanding of what the rules are for the competitive standard, you know?
Yeah, that's that should probably be resolved.
Well, it's not even on Triturnion. It's like, I mean, I guess it could be, but
No, it definitely is. Because Tritarian are the one that published the server files for these providers. I mean, who else would it be?
Yeah, but it's like it's
Anyhow,
on the server providers that they run the configs that they're given correctly and that sort of thing, and give players who
that's
are
true.
the API you use to set up your server may not be set up in the way because they might have just been, oh look at this thing, I'm just gonna throw it in my server hosting list, and then they give you the basic API, but then there's more settings that the devs gave you access to, but the server provider didn't think to include or whatever, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, just core issues that really frustrate me.
How's Taiga?
It's interesting.
Taiga's my favorite, even though it's not Darkstar's favorite, just because I like that there's no siege weapons and horses don't really play a role. There is the one ballista, but it's in a location that's neutral, in my opinion, instead of just a sniper spot way in the back that you just take pot shots because you can. And there's no easy way to punish it.
How's the first objective? To me, that's like
It's trash.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
the first objective is, in my view, it's almost irrelevant because like I don't see a way that the defense can actually win, or the first objective, or even really stall for any significant period of time. So really, it's just a race to see who can stomp it faster. But even I don't know. It just seems like it doesn't really serve a purpose. Like it's just the offense will run over. The best thing you can do is fortify, and like teams like Uwu, what they do basically is they just run all rats and they just avoid team fights because it's not their best chance to win on the first objective. And the first objective, you don't even need to fight, right? Like I think Taiga's good on the second, third, and fourth stage, but I think the first stage is kind of trash. It just doesn't serve a purpose to me.
Yeah, I meant more like, how is it in terms of like, have teams found out a way to defend it, or is it just?
It's basically it's so easy for the attackers to optimize around whatever the defenders do that as much as it's cool to come up with defensive strats, it's like pretty much anything can be hit with a projectile with a different arc from anywhere on the map once you learn the locations. So there's not even much of a point to building after a certain.
There's like CS:GO type throwing areas where you can like throw a fire pot to hit the back peasants, and there's
Okay,
like nothing you can
what
do
about a
except for
smoke
sit there with
pot?
the smoke pot. Yeah, you can do that, but at that point you're like sending one of your guys to just throw a smoke pot at the ground, you know. So like that can open you up. If a team knows that you do that every time, then they can like abuse the man down. But yeah, like there are ways you can counter that stuff, but basically you can throw knives from a few different spots that we found, and you can kill most of the peasants on first stage Taiga without ever even coming in contact with them. So basically, the best thing you can do is just fortify and like waste time. But I really like the second stage of Taiga. I think it's like a really decently designed objective, and the third stage is it's a lot of fun. We actually recently we've been scrimming it a lot and been like recording our scrims to see like how the stuff we're implementing is doing. And we, like as a team, we've made a lot of progress on Taiga in like 3 days. Like it's totally polar opposite. We've scrimmed it like 4 times total, and every time we learn like an optimization. And there's a lot of strategic depth to Taiga, and
How
I
about
think it will be.
third objective? Has anyone? Is the 4 barrels insta complete still a thing, or?
No. There's a lot of good
no.
ways to defend on that now.
Okay.
That one is defendable because, well, I actually don't want to say too much, but suffice to say, there are places you can build that cause a lot of issues. There are ways to negate the barrel carriers before they ever become a threat that are good.
And if people are going to do the barrel dodge strat, they're forced to telegraph it, right? So like what teams will do is they'll either leave one of the houses that are easy to burn with 1 torch left, or they'll leave the barricade like 1 or 2 hits away from breaking. So you can almost always tell when a team's going to attempt it, and so you can just send one guy to just go over there and watch.
Let's see. You know, I always thought fourth objective was interesting because, well, I don't know how it plays out, but in my mind, if you lose an engagement when it's like sort of when it's going into like the main cave, so coming out of that like narrow hall into the main cave, you just like lose a full melee engagement there. I think you just like lose the whole thing. Is that true?
If you lose the barrel dodge part,
No. Fourth objective, I'm talking. So when you're pushing the cart, right, and then you know that long cave, it's sort of near the beginning. but then you get into like the main cave, it's kind of open, lots of stairs and shit. So I always thought that if you just lose the engagement when you have it at that position, where it's kind of in that main cave area, you just lose the rest of it. Like there's nothing you can do. Is that true, or how does that usually play out?
From what I've seen, whichever team can get to the 4th stage usually will win. It's just like a matter of can you slow them down enough to win on your offense. I think the best opportunity to DNF a team is the barrel stage.
The third objective. What about second objective? I thought in my mind that one, while hard, is definitely possible to DNF. No?
The second objective?
On Taiga, yeah. The
I don't think a team, like if you take 2 teams that are relatively similar, I don't see them getting DNF'd on second objective all that often. But I mean, certainly it's possible. Like I'm not saying it's impossible.
Well,
I just think.
Why is that? Is it because there's so many avenues to go through, or I guess like
Yeah.
why is it so easy for attackers to complete that?
Yeah, I'm not going to give up any setups, but there are things you can do with builders that greatly reduce their ability to like move freely. And basically what Taiga's second objective comes down to is where you can force the team fight to take place.
Does anyone like ever go all the way around, like through the back?
From the right side?
Like if you're yeah. You like go around the rear, like literally through the back of the camp.
Nobody does, but the thing is even if they did that, I'm not sure how good it would be because unless you're kind of like a lower level team, you should be fighting on the pyres, you know? Like that should be where you're fighting, in my opinion.
Right, that's true. I see. Yeah, I think Taiga is definitely. I like it. First objective. Again, I like the idea of like an objective being really hard to defend, and so it kind of just becomes a matter of optimizing the time. But I feel like with Taiga first objective, I feel like it's a little bit too hard to defend. It's pretty much instant in every case that I've seen it in. So I don't know. They should probably balance that first objective. It is a bit ridiculous, I think. It seems pointless.
It doesn't serve a point to me, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good way to describe it. It's just kind of there. Alright, well that's good for maps. So what's the best? What's the tier list? What's the tier list, guys?
For maps?
No, for teams.
Oh, jeez. Well, I mean, the chat on the stream is just people like measuring edicts right now because nobody can agree. And ultimately, I think that tells you everything you need to know. It's close enough that nobody has any concrete evidence of any team being better than the other, aside from maybe Tempest. Like,
well, if we go just by
to go off
strictly
of.
results, yeah, if we go by scrim results, the
We
best
can't, though. That's
guess.
pointless because there's never the
Yeah,
best
it is
lineups.
pointless, but the best guess would be. I mean, Tempest and North are pretty close. You have to say because North is winning scrims. If you're going by scrims, we haven't scrimmed North and on Invasion in a while, but we've won a couple and we've lost one. But I don't use that to say that we're better than North because we haven't scrimmed them on Invasion in a while. Uwu smashed
are there big
us.
roster changes? Like, what are the rosters like?
Well, Inquisition is gone. I don't know if you heard about that. They disbanded right after they played Tempest.
Well, I don't even know what Inquisition was.
They were.
Do you mean like Legion Inquisition or?
No, the
like...
Team Inquisition. They're the team that Tempest played in the MCL playoffs. That almost.
Yeah, that was basically Legion though.
It was half Legion, half Inquisition. But there's players from that thing on North. Some of them are on Darkstar. Some of them are on Uwu. Some of them are on whatever. Like, there's been a lot of redistribution of like player skill recently.
So is North the same or?
I don't know if Morning still plays, but he played today in a scrim, but that doesn't tell us anything. So, again, like I know he's.
I think he will probably come back though, if I had to guess.
Right. So if we assume that anyone who's ever played on a good team is still on the good team, with the exceptions being Goat and Wizardish, then not much has changed, I guess, except that Uwu didn't exist and Darkstar didn't exist.
So who's on Uwu?
Yang, Marzi,
Oh my
Mort.
God. See, I really wanted to
Wall.
I really wanted to resonate with Uu. Like, I thought, wow, this team sounds really cool. I actually like what they do. I actually think Yang's like pretty intelligent. I really like what he does.
Yeah, he's a smart shot caller.
And then you just tell me Mars is on that team. What a letdown.
And Mort too.
No, Mort's. I love Mort.
Congratulations, Mort. You did it.
That's unfortunate. I can't support that team just because that's unfortunate. Who else is on it?
Wolfraff, Smile. Who else? Armor Spartan, but I don't know if he's starting or not. I don't know.
And so like, oh yeah, my other question is like, are archers standard?
Depends on the map.
That's what I figured. I mean, for like the majority, is it standard?
I don't know, dude. It's really all over the place. What
Well,
is
so I
standard
mean,
even?
well, okay, so I mean, like, does Uwu have a dedicated archer?
They have Russian, I believe. No, Russian's on North.
Russian
Never mind,
Mafia's
that's a
on
fat lie.
North,
That's
yeah.
a fat lie. Sorry.
Oh, he's on
Miscommunication.
North?
It's interesting though. The play style among the like good teams is like there's a wide variety, right? Like we haven't scrimmed North on Invasion yet, so I can't speak to them. But I know Tempest is like pretty strat heavy. I know Darkstar, like we just started like learning Invasion like a week ago, so like we're pretty strat and mechanical mixed. Like we just figured out how to play Taiga like 2 days ago, but Uwu is very strat heavy, right? Like if you watch how they play on Taiga, a lot of their strategy is like avoiding team fights. It's really interesting. Like they are very good about playing objective, and they just avoid team fights, which is actually mathematically, it's probably the best way to play map dependent, just focusing objectives. But basically, there's like a wide array of play styles.
I see. So who's the best?
It's impossible to say. Probably North or Tempest.
I think anybody saying a team is better or worse right now is just an opinion, and there's not much else to it. So it's fun
Especially
to talk
'cause
about.
people
how
are
about
but,
how about individually? Okay,
as
and
far as
don't give me some duel bullshit. You know how I feel about that.
yeah, I
Fine,
know.
Ren can be best duelist. Fine, all right. But
Okay.
who's the best player?
Honestly, Cyclone.
I don't know. I still think Ren's the best player. I think people shit on his team play more than is warranted.
I'd
But
say Cyclone.
I've always
and Blonde
said,
are both
though-
very, very, very good all around.
yeah, if I had to
Are there
steal
any
a player,
up-and-coming prodigies?
well, if they're up and coming prodigies, just by the nature of them, we don't know about them yet. You know, a hard one to answer. But are there players
So-
who like are skilled?
It's like as
Is
of
that-
even right now, it's like the second we say anything about anybody in North, or everybody in the North in the chat is instantly just like gonna explode because it's too close to call for the most part. I don't think.
What do they say? What do people say?
Well, if I say
Well, it's just the ego battle.
if you say
for
anything
now.
about Rim or
People-
Blonde besides they're the best players on the literal planet, they're not happy, and that's how every team is.
Oh,
Like, if we say anything about any team, it's too close to call, so anybody can say that they're the best right now.
I think Blonde's actually
Their best player. That's what
yeah,
I think too.
by far. I think Blonde. Well, and I say that because things could have changed, but at least when I played, he was the only one with capacity for team play. Like he was the only one that
That has
understood what that
changed.
meant.
That has changed
Has
a
it?
little. They're not full blown dueler boys. But I've said for a while, like if there was a situation where like I could pick any NA player to be on the Darkstar starting roster, even out of every single team, my pick would be Blonde, just because like he's mechanically, duel wise and otherwise, he's like good enough, like against any player. But his team play and like his situational awareness in team fights is like top tier.
Yeah, I always thought he was the best player on North, simply because like he was the only one that wouldn't like always tunnel vision.
Yeah, I would
Like,
I would
he
take
just-
him given the option for sure.
Yeah. So, but are there any new names, any fresh faces?
I'm-
No.
It kind of depends on what you mean. Are there players like, for example,
Is there
I'll-
anyone relevant who
I'll-
wasn't here when you left? Is I guess what you're asking,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
I would say Kronk. I mean, Kronk wasn't really that relevant even like 2 months ago, but
Yeah,
I think
is top
Kronk
five
will be
now.
one of the best players in the game in a few months.
Is he the one that like
Beat you?
lost me
Yes.
100? Ah,
Yes.
let's see.
The only problem with Kronk is that he's insane individually, but he's still kind of like learning to break his like dual tunnel vision mindset. But he has a really good attitude, and he's like pretty humble. about criticism. Like he'll listen to anything I say, really. So I think Kronk will be like a top 2 or even the best player in the game in a few months.
It just needs to be, if the game still has a scene by then. I'm so not optimistic about the scene right now. Like, if this...
Well, okay, but... Okay. I'll interrupt you before you even finish your thought, because you were saying the same things months ago.
I was.
This game
and-
will also always have a competitive scene, even if the casuals die off. The competitive players will
Okay,
still
I
play.
should
But at
put a
that
big
point,
asterisk
it's
then. I have so little faith in a relevant comp scene where people can invest time into it that's not just a hobby where it's for fun.
Better said. Better said.
Like,
I agree
obviously
with
people
that.
will still play this game for fun. Like, I mean, if you enjoy the game now, I don't really see it necessarily getting worse. I don't know. They could get worse, but that'd be kind of unfortunate. It's just like, I certainly am toward the end of my time caring about this game. If there's no sign of life from the devs soon. Just like,
You know what I find funny is that they're like, hey, yeah, we know we were gonna release these maps and we didn't. Here's this patch. There's gonna be a ton of patch in the coming weeks. And it was just like standard. They just had like 1 or 2 patches. I just thought that was so funny.
yeah.
It's a bit sad, but it's so funny. Like, they're like, yeah, we're gonna roll out numerous patches in the next month. This was like what, September, right?
Yeah. They came out
And
with
that-
Rainbow V1, and then they came out with Invasion, and they're like, "We're set, guys. It's gonna be great from here on out." And then
Yeah,
silence.
it was just like the standard like 2 patches after the patch, and it's like, oh.
Yeah,
sucks.
it's just like, it's not even like it's the devs' fault, because obviously they've gotten what they wanted out of it, and the players who are going to enjoy this game will continue to enjoy the game. But I don't know. For me, I can't enjoy a game unless we're making progress in a direction as an entirety of a community, which I think that's just my curse. Was I am not somebody who was a loyalist to the series or a loyalist to the genre or a loyalist at all. I'm one of those normies who saw an ad for the game 3 days before it came out and went, wow, it's like Medieval Battlefield. I'll download that and see what it's like. And then it turned out I really liked it because it reminded me of For Honor in the way that the combat played for whatever reason. I know obviously a lot of people say it's not similar, but for me, my experience was, oh, I liked For Honor and that game was cool and this game is kind of like that. So I'll just...
You know how I got my start in Chivalry? I was a typical COD kid. Okay, imagine you're like stereotypical console COD like 12-year-old. Okay, picture that in your head. That was me and my favorite COD YouTuber at the time, Drifter. He made a video on
oh
Chivalry.
god.
He made a video on Chivalry and I was like, man, that game looks like fun. I'm gonna play that. So I was like, Mom, I need this game. Buy this game for me. She's like, I don't know, it looks pretty bloody. I was like, no, it's all good. She's like, okay. And then, yeah, then I started playing Chivalry. Yeah, I'm not like a loyalist or anything either. I just think like the game is fun.
Yeah, the difference being that you kind of made a name for yourself by being really good, and people, that kind of makes you a loyalist in a way. It's like, you can't really be somebody who's not really that invested in the series and also be the best player over everyone else. It's kind of like a juxtaposition of ideals, you know? Unless you're literally just like, yeah, I play this every 2 hours, like 2 hours a week, but I'm also better than everybody who plays over 100 hours a week. Which, I don't know, that hasn't been what I've
I
seen.
don't know.
But
I mean, I don't think I'm a loyalist in the sense, I mean, I literally just like walk away. If I was a loyalist, I probably wouldn't I mean, I don't even play the game like for fun.
sure. But you said you wish you could, right?
I wish I could. But that's just because I like the game. It's fun. And I think League shit. I think League is not a good game for competitive. I think, well, that's a whole nother discussion, but let's just say I'm not too fond of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, that's why I've said the SDK is the answer to this game. It's like, let's just accept that the devs have done what they plan to do, and also that they promised us an SDK in the Kickstarter campaign. That's the big thing that makes me always scratch my head, is like, they marketed the fact that the SDK was going to be so easy to make, and they put the little Star Wars lightsaber teaser thing, even though that was not even going to be in the actual game. They literally made a mod to show off that there would be mod support, and that it was going to be easy. And then they realized after the fact that it wasn't. So, give us the things that were promised on a little docket, which would be 3v3 ranked and the SDK, and then call it a day, and let the community take it from there, you know? Like, if they've gotten all they wanted to out of it, don't burn yourself with it. Let the community take over and do what they need to do with it, because at whatever point we've said and agreed that the game is not going to surge back into relevancy again, TT, thank you for the bits, man. At whatever point that happens, it's not gonna, like, once we accept defeat, basically, on the relevancy train, then it becomes what can be done to increase the fun factor across the board and the longevity of the game in the hands of the community. You know?
Yeah. Well, you see, I've always had the player perspective, and so what that means for me, at least, is it's just like, I don't really care. I just play the game. It's fun. I just care about doing well in scrims. Care about doing good. Whether or not the game is like alive, it's like whatever. But that's a little bit different now since like the league is an actual opportunity, and now I kind of have to abandon that mindset. You know, if I wasn't good at league, then I'd probably just be playing Mordhau.
Something you'll notice from playing League, and something I noticed from like a comparison from Counter-Strike, is something that's fascinating, and even my team is guilty of this, right? People play scrims in Mordhau not for practicing and learning and trying new shit. They play scrims to try to win, right? Like,
Yep.
Nobody will take time to, like, no one is willing to lose a scrim to try strats because they're afraid of, like, the shit talk that will happen or whatever. It's actually really interesting. Like, it's hard, and as I said, even on my own team, it's hard to, like, tell my teammates, like, guys, we're trying out new strats, or, like, we're trying a new setup. Whether we win or lose is, like, totally irrelevant. We want to see, like, what these setups do. But, like, the attitude towards scrims is, like, polar opposite in Mordhau to other games. Like, in Counter-Strike, a team would say, like, hey, we're going to try this B execute and this A execute, and that's the whole purpose of the scrim. And whether we win or lose at the end literally makes no difference. But in Mordhau, it's like, sure, we can try something, but if it doesn't work, we're going to go back to what we were doing and try to win. And to me, it's like, that's not the purpose scrims serve in other games, and that's not the purpose it's supposed to serve. And so, like,
You're absolutely right, and that's actually something like I recognize in Alpha way before all of you were born, back in Mordhau Alpha. Okay, no, I'm kidding. Was like VQ, right? Basically the only team back then. And I guess Destiny or Triumphant or whatever the fuck the morning teams are called, right? They were all play to win mentality, always. But early on, I was like, very early on, I was like, guys, if we're gonna scrim, if we're gonna, because you know back then it was just like 3v3 LTS, 2v2 is like always play to improve. And so I was like,
Yeah.
drop the egos, like we're not playing to win. And the reason why is because it got to a point in the alpha where it's just like 7-0, 7-0, 7-0, 7-0. And it's just like, you know, at that point, what do you have to prove? There's nothing to prove. So at that point, we just wanted to optimize. It's like, wanted to practice new things like feeding teammates reposts. I want to see like, oh, can we make that work? By the way, that's still something I think could work. It just requires probably a ludicrous amount of practice. And you know, play to win, like you said. But yeah, that's something early on, like in the alpha, that I told that lineup.
That's kind of the
Just
sad
told them.
reality of this game, is like, the players who play this game competitively now, with the exception being Tempest, and I've seen Darkstar and Uwu and North start to care a little bit, but nowhere near the level Tempest does, as far as optimizing. Optimizing is like a foreign concept to the majority of teams in this game because there's no reason to win besides bragging rights, and then maybe $100 here and there if their prize pools are cool. But it's like, this game, because it's so far from relevancy, means that ego is the primary driving force instead of...
that's the currency, yeah.
Yeah, ego is the currency. So it's
True.
like trying to play to win, truly, like you'd see in a Counter-Strike scene where there may be some ego scratches here and there, but that's not the main point. It's like playing to brutally win silently and efficiently is not the way that these players like to win. They like to win in a way that is flashy and puts your opponent in the grave and makes their career quote-unquote
But to be
end.
fair though, I don't even care if that happens, because the thing is like, as you know, Ron, being like our coach and the guy that records our VODs so that we can see how our shit works. Like, if other teams take scrims as an opportunity to win, that benefits the teams that are actually practicing, because like, look at how much progress a team that truly is dedicated to practicing and optimizing can go in 2 days. Like, you remember 2 days ago, we had scrimmed Taiga 3 times, and we had literally no idea how to do anything on Taiga. And two days of testing and optimizing, like, we're legitimately solid on Taiga now. So, like, if teams want to, like, barely innovate or, like, not be willing to test stuff, because they want to win scrims. It actually favors the teams that are willing to grind and like actually practice and use them for what they're for. So like, I
Yeah,
actually
but
hope
then-
it stays the same for my own selfish reasons.
Yeah, but it's like, why are we even having that conversation? It's like Tempest played like a competitive team would play. Not in the sense of the physical gameplay, but they kind of kept to themselves. They didn't go out of their way to be like beating their chest and saying, we're the best and you guys should be ashamed. And they didn't go into scrims murdering everyone with rocks. Looking at you, VK. But anyway, it's just like the way they played the game was like a competitive team that was actually playing to win, not
Yeah.
showboaters trying to make everyone else feel bad for being bad. Like, that's
Yeah, the thing about Tempest. I'm sorry.
it's like the way the team, like, ego is the currency, and until
Yeah, it
that's
is.
different, there's no reason to really, I don't know. There's the goal
And the other thing
would
is
be to
too-
take the game seriously, but there's no reason to take the game seriously as of now. So why
Yeah,
would you?
the funny thing is too, Wiz, is I know from my own point of view, when I was on North, we were scrimming you guys, and we had like a mix of A lineup and B lineup at the time, and we were actually beating Tempest like really well in skirmish, and you actually like rage quit, and I gotta say, like, nothing has ever been more satisfying than when North was scrimming Tempest, and you had most of your A lineup, and we. Like you even pulled out the strat where you used the crossbow fire pot, which was like crazy hard to deal with in skirmish. So like that was like one of the biggest like victories. It was like, oh, we made him rage quit, bro. He's pissed.
Yeah, the David and Goliath mentality with like the power fantasy is all there is, though. That's the unfortunate thing. Like, all of that was so cool,
Well-
and it was a hero moment, but did you make any money off of it, and did it affect your future?
and
No, it's just
and
a
we
cool
didn't get
memory.
better either.
No, but
Right.
I mean, people start with that though. That's kind of like the foundation. You know, it doesn't like I guess if we just talk about financial and stuff, doesn't that come later?
Wait.
I mean, isn't
Listen
the
to Mort
foundation
shit talking
always
in chat right
ego?
now. Mort
don't
shit
care,
talking
dude.
as if he's ever but it's just funny because like he's acting like he's ever got close to
Why
beating
are we giving Mort attention?
Wizardish.
Muff?
I just think it's I know, but it's funny.
When has Mort ever been funny?
No, laughing at him is funny.
I guess. Thank you for the follow.
But yeah.
Your name is.
I think I think teams are starting to shift though, Wiz, which is a good sign. Like I've seen more experimental shit from teams and scrims as of late, which I think is good because if you're just scrimming to win, the only thing that you're going to improve is your mechanical skill and team fighting. Like your strategies won't really get tested or like you won't optimize appropriately.
Yeah, it's like one of the big things that I thought was interesting is like one of the big pillars of competitive in any framework is trying new things and being okay with failure. But in a world where ego is the currency, failure is unacceptable, right? So experimentation and innovation are squandered as a result. It's the same thing in like the business world, not to go draw some long and annoying analogy, but basically like whenever a company is not okay with failure, it means that all of their employees are incentivized to just do what's expected perfectly and not try anything new, not do anything differently, where it could lead to benefits in optimization and like more efficiency and that sort of thing. And it's just interesting to me that that's not okay here, because like if you lose, well, shame on you, obviously the worst team. It's like when Darkstar played Uwu, it was just understood to be like scrim, and scrimmages by definition are supposed to be for practice and for learning, right? But instead of it being both teams come out of that like, all right, we may have our differences, but we both learned a lot, whatever. It's like, you're so trash, dude. I fucking farmed you on that. Like, there's no conversation of anything of value. There's nothing. It's just like a flex fest, and it's just like, to me, that's what. So I'm no longer interested in playing in the scene. I'm fostering competition for other people because I see that as, if it ever works out, that'd be cool. I give Mordhau about a 20% chance of ever becoming relevant, and if it does, I'm willing to like have been there.
That's generous.
Yeah, I know it is, but it's my
That's
stubborn
very
optimism.
generous.
But it's like I no longer have any fun competing because just the ego stuff got to me, and it was like, man, I can't have a substantive conversation with anybody that's not on my team about anything because it's all, well, I beat you in that duel one time, and you're like, oh, all right, well, it was good.
Yeah,
talk.
I never appreciated the play to win mentality. I mean, now like I understand it, but it's just because I always had the mindset of like not that, I guess. For me, the fun in the game was just like optimizing shit. Like melee is so natural, it's just like, okay, here's what I thought. Now I don't think this anymore, but I thought like back in the day, like what ideal Mordhau would look like is just like you know that you win a fight, Like you just 100% guarantee you know a fight under like certain conditions. Like if it's a 5v4, you know 100% you win that or something like that. And so the game would just become about like greater macro strategy, like greater movements and I don't know, like builder strategies or some shit like that. Basically, you could like predict all melee fights. Now I don't think that's actually accurate, but I was just always caught up with the idea of like refining, just refining and optimization. The big one that I mentioned it a few minutes ago. The big one I'm still fascinated about is if teams can somehow like master and utilize feeding each other reposts. It's actually like, especially in a 2v1 scenario, I think it's actually insanely useful.
Oh, another thing that was a big change that I don't know if you heard about, but you might have, is for the league, Tritonian added team flinch as an option in server configs, and it will be on for the league. So if you hit a teammate,
I think that's
out of
good.
their attack.
That's good.
That's necessary, I would say.
I think
Yeah.
so too.
So you could have 100%
Because
team damage and
feints
team
are
flinch.
fucking annoying. I hate
Team feints are unreadable. Like, what, you're gonna not parry? You're gonna assume this guy's gonna smack his teammate? Like,
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like, it's so hard for, I guess, a person like me, because I'm always so interested in progress instead of a hobby.
Are you a Diablo fan?
No, but I know what it is.
Are you a Path of Exile fan?
No. Those are all like grindy
Damn.
RPGs, yeah?
Yeah, but progression.
Okay, well, when I say progression, I mean outside the game, not in the game.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, what I mean by that is, like, if there's, like, more content and more signs of, like, whatever, outside just the progression system of, like, a character. So I guess meta progression, in the sense of, like, okay, the game it'll stay fresh, right? Even if it's just a hobby. But then when you go to, like, it'd be even better if the game is improving holistically. So, like, there's more money in advertising, and there's more money in the competitive scene, and there's more money, and there's an SDK, and then the community starts coming up with really cool content. That was the stuff that I thought was going to happen when I got into the game, and since it didn't, we're left with the same game we had 4 months ago. And it's just
here's a
like,
pro strat, okay? You ready? Look at Mordhau as a halfway point between Shiv and Shiv 2, okay? And just hope to God that Shiv 2 looks at Mordhau's failures, and I hope Shiv 2 brings back morphs. I think morphs are an interesting addition to melee combat, and I hope they bring back chambers for stabs only. And if they do that, then maybe they'll innovate in a way that makes it more interesting, and they'll like improve on what this game failed, if the game fails.
I think it'd be cool to have that mentality, but in my opinion, putting all your chips on Shift 2 is a coping mechanism, not an actual whatever.
It's a coping net mechanism, but it's effective.
About Shiv 2 boys is Epic Store exclusive. That's all I'm gonna say.
That doesn't bother me too much.
Yeah.
Might not bother you.
If the game is
bothers a good 90-some% other people.
Is that true? Do we have, like,
Yeah,
a reference to point?
people really care.
I don't know. But
No, but on a serious note, do people actually care about like?
I think they did. It's kind of the
with
same
that,
thing
I
of, like,
guess.
when Half-Life 2 came out, you had to download Steam in order to install it, and everyone's like, what the fuck is this shitty Steam thing? But eventually they forgot about it, and then there were games on there that they couldn't afford to miss out on, and we moved on. Like, people, they like to complain about launchers on PC that are free to install, but after a certain point, people just bite the bullet, and they're like, okay, you know what? Maybe the Chinese have my credit card info. Whatever.
If the game is good enough, though, but a real concern is that some number of people may not even ever be exposed to it just because it's on the Epic Store.
well, okay, I'm just one voice, right? Here's the thing. I tried For Honor. Is that the Ubisoft launcher?
Yeah.
Yeah, that launcher was dog shit. I
It
really
was.
did not appreciate it. There's some other few, but basically in the past few years, I've, like a friend will be like, hey, play this game. And so nowadays it's just like, oh, is it on Steam? If not, then nope, I'm not playing. Because I'm just so used to everything being on Steam. And honestly, these other companies or whatever, they try to do their like own launchers or whatever. And it's just dog shit. Like,
Why didn't you just add the games to your Steam launcher?
Oh, you could. I guess I could do that, but I just don't like the idea of having to fucking download these fucking pieces of. I'm just lazy. Okay, that's what it is.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm just so used to everything being on Steam, and I'll be frank with you. I don't even know what's on the Epic Game Store other than Fortnite.
Call of Duty Black Ops 4 is stuff like that.
Wait,
Activision.
I got that game without.
Wait, no,
that.
that's Blizzard, right?
Yeah, it's Blizzard, that's correct.
Yeah,
Never
yeah.
mind. Sorry.
Well, I do like the Blizzard launcher, so I'm used to everything being on the Blizzard Battle.net or Steam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't even know what's on there other than Fortnite. Like that's all I associate with Epic.
Well,
Unreal
there's some.
Engine
I
and
mean,
Fortnite.
I know Borderlands 3 is on Epic. That was a pretty significant one is for people who enjoy those kinds of games. I don't know. I personally haven't had a reason to install the Epic Games launcher, but that's only because I have very little care about any. Well, actually, that's not true. I have the launcher installed. I just haven't installed any games through it. And even if I did, I would just add them to the Steam launcher for the sake of the UI after the fact, and then never think about it again. But I don't know. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I think it'd be nice if everything could just be on Steam. You know.
Yeah, but it's
I
like,
probably get some hate for that, but I don't see anything wrong with Steam, so fuck it, dude.
well, the big thing that's wrong with Steam, not that this affects you at all, is that they take more than twice the cut from developers relative to.
They also
the Epic
have
Store.
a much bigger player base. Like,
Yeah. I'm just
to
saying.
me, that's fair. It's like they
it's a
have
premium
more
for a larger player base. So, for example, Epic Games takes 12% from devs, whereas Steam takes 30%. So, obviously, some developers are going to go, you know what? I'd rather just cut my losses and put it on Epic. It's just like a natural progression. And then, I don't know. That doesn't matter to the consumers at all, and most consumers don't even know that's a thing. But the Epic Game Store is pro-developer, whereas the Steam place is pro-consumer. So, it's just like, that's why developers would put their game on Epic when Steam makes more sense for the consumer. And consumers
But
also have no reason to care, because who the fuck, I mean, why would you care
Well,
who makes more money? where?
Aren't there less buyers in the market for Epic Game?
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
So isn't that sort of the 12%? Isn't that sort of offset by the fact that there's just less buyers in that particular market?
So like, the way I kind of think about it, and no one here has the numbers, and no one ever will. I imagine they keep it pretty locked up. But like, if you think about it, it makes more sense for a huge AAA title to launch on Steam because the 30% is less of a hindrance because they're going to sell a lot of copies on a very broad platform like Steam. But then you have companies who know their game isn't going to sell as well on PC as it will on console. So having a partnership with Epic or Blizzard makes more sense because they get more of the money that they would have gotten, and probably the players that were going to buy that game probably would have bought it anyway. You know, like Call of Duty, for example, right? It's not going to be commercially successful. Black Ops 4 I'm talking about here. Modern Warfare is a bit different because of the actual innovation, but with Black Ops 4, the people who were going to buy that game on PC was mostly the Battle Royale crowd, and those people were probably going to buy it anyways because it was the best Battle Royale at the time, and so it probably made more sense for them to go to the Blizzard launcher, right? But if it's a big AAA game that's like got a mass appeal to a big market, I think Steam probably would be the go-to strat because just a way bigger user base.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough. It's just like, there's no, in my opinion, there should never be a reason where we're saying the monopoly is better. I guess the UI is a kind of a cool thing because they have a good UI and whatever works for people. But I'm always in favor of competition, even if one side is worse, because then they'll be making each other be more pro-consumer. So I like that the Epic Store exists, even if it's not as good as Steam, and I like that they make a compelling case for more developers.
You like Mixer?
I like that it exists, but I don't personally use it because they don't do as good of a job as Twitch, and it's that simple. But I, on principle, do think that there should be companies trying to take that market share. And if they're not chosen because they're worse, fine. You know?
Well, it's impossible to overtake YouTube or Twitch because of the infrastructure they have and the amount of users, right? So, like, the only way is if some other Twitch or YouTube competitor was able to snag some major content creators, then yeah, but Ninja was on the decline for months.
How's he doing,
before.
by the way?
Pretty terrible. He gets like 3,000 viewers a
Not
day.
well. And so
However,
that is
he's still
that
profited
isn't
from that
even
deal. It's just Mixer
yeah,
lost out.
sure.
Oh my.
He made
But
$10 million from that. Mixer lost out.
But what I'm saying is, though, other people will look at that and say, yeah, I'm not committing career suicide for a one-time payout. And that will happen every single time because YouTube and Twitch are they've established themselves in the electronic age before people thought it was a good idea. And I don't see a good competitor coming along.
So they shouldn't even try? Just give up and say, alright, there are
They can
overlords
try.
for the next 100 years.
Anyone can do anything they want with their money and their business ideas. I'm just saying, if I was a multimillionaire, that's not the avenue I'm going for.
Right.
It's just not the safest investment.
I'm saying, I guess, I know people hate talking about on principle, but on principle, I think to just give up right off the bat and say, all right, for the next 100 years, we're content with YouTube and a lot of their shitty malpractice that you give to their content creators being the norm, and there should never be any competition, and they can just do whatever they want. Like, there's been so much complacency from YouTube because they know there's no threat that it drives down the experience for the users. So for a lot of content creators, it's very, very difficult to monetize themselves anymore. They have to look for other avenues of net revenue sources besides just ad revenue, which previously would have been more than enough. It's like, I don't know. The facts.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We're talking about Mordhau. I appreciate that was my
Fair.
fault. I got us off track. But anyway, let's see. What do we want to talk about next? Oh, I want to go back to the tier list. Okay, here's the thing.
He wants to start fire. The Twitch chat.
Yeah. I'm retired, so like I can like have an opinion now without being seen as like an asshole. You know, like.
Well, you'll still be seen as an asshole. Just nobody. It doesn't matter.
I'm
Well,
yeah.
yeah, dude, I want to be like that. I want to be like that.
Be the villain the
guy.
scene needs. There you go.
I'm going to withhold my opinion as a player, as the only one here who actively competes.
Right. And I'm
The
also
problem is, though,
neutral.
I haven't watched.
With Darkstar is the problem now. Well, not problem.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's,
but you're not a player, so your ego is not as invested. So people would
Correct.
argue that anything I say, they're going to say that it's my ego talking. So
Sure.
I'd rather let. Yeah.
I just like, dude. I want to be like that sick analyst. You know, with all these opinions. The problem is, I just simply haven't watched, so I feel like I can't convey an accurate opinion. Shame.
No, I kid.
No, so I have to ask you two.
Well, what is there to watch though? Really?
I don't know. Don't you watch scrims?
Yeah, when they happen, but they just happen behind closed doors. I've been trying to stream, for whatever reason. I think one of the biggest NA Mordhau streamers right now. I don't know how that happened, but I've been trying to stream scrims whenever I get wind of them, just so that there's something to exist. And I'm also joined Vanaz to run the NA portion of the Mordhau League.
You stream scrims with permission, of course, right? From mommy and daddy, right?
Yeah.
Permission.
Yeah. It's like I don't think I've ever just barged into a scrim and streamed it. If anything else, I'll record the VOD for Darkstar and then keep it unlisted. Like that's what we did. Like I know Darkstar versus Uwu. Darkstar didn't really want it streamed because we didn't really know what the hell was going on in Taiga. So we just recorded the VOD and kept it unlisted and then talked about it internally. So it's like sometimes.
No,
again,
I think
that's
we
the other
didn't
thing
want it
is, like,
streamed because didn't want it. We didn't want it streamed, if you remember, because they were trying to say we were trying to steal their strats.
Oh, that's true. But also, regardless, the problem with that is the reason that mentality ever starts is because, well, we can all say it's not because of the money. Like, if you math it out, there's $50,000 in the prize pool for the Vanadis League. There's $5,000 per region, which means $2,500 for first prize. And even then, it's split among 6 players at best, which gives you like $417 a player. So, if you just want lunch money for a month, fair enough. But that's not really why we're arguing about who's the better team here. The real reason is because ego is a currency, and therefore everybody likes to hide their strats so that they can have this winning mentality all the time and then flex on people. That's the real reason why. So it's fun to say, well, I mean, there's this league, so we can be serious about it now, but realistically, it's just another community thing that's happening that has severely lackluster support from the developers and overwhelming support from, well, not even overwhelming anymore, but good enough support from the community where it'll get off the ground and probably be okay. So, like, the reason we can't stream scrims is not because there's money on the line or stakes. It's because people don't like losing on stream. It's that simple.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cringe.
Yeah,
It is pretty cringe.
It's pretty fucking cringe.
Especially
when Legion did that before the what was that tournament called?
Mordhau
Yeah,
Community
it
League,
is.
or is it a different one?
No,
Vanadis
the
tournament?
other, the Vanadis one. We'll just call it that.
Okay.
Fucking dude, we joined Legion server, okay, and Yang just permabanned us. It was so funny. Like it was skirmish, and I guess they had some strats or something they wanted to hide, but we joined the server because we just had caught wind that Legion was beating North or something. We were like, holy shit! So like we wanted to hop in the server and like see that happen. But then we
You
just
could be
all got
stealing
perma-
strats, dude. You never know. All those GC
Yeah,
Legion strats that you didn't have access to could have won you the next match. Oh wait.
Yeah, for the big 5v5 skirmish, but
Which
but,
didn't even
yeah.
have a prize pool as far as I know. Like, did Tempest get any money from that?
I don't think so.
And that's the funny thing too. I've always, I know this is kind of a worn out paradox, but I always think it's funny that Skills is in charge of finding sponsors for tournaments, which his team then wins and gets prize money from. So he's basically just like finding money for his players. I know it's kind of fucked up to point that out, but I've always thought it was amusing.
Well,
but I also think, why the fuck not? Because I mean, the scene's so small anyway. So
It might be different now. Who do you guys think will win the? Is the league? Yeah, it's not even started yet, is it? It starts next weekend.
the qualifiers start next weekend.
Okay, well, who's gonna win the whole thing?
Tempest
Possible
doesn't
to
know.
say.
I mean, unless...
But is that even true though? Because like credit where it's due. I mean, North has been beating Tempest lately, but I'm sure Tempest has got some cheesy little strats up their sleeve.
Yeah, of
they
course,
always
they're
do.
hiding the strats because
Of course,
gotta win,
yeah.
remember?
Well, I mean that makes sense though. I mean, I don't want to show.
Yeah, why
our
would you ever
strats on
try in a
stream either.
scrim? Like, what the hell, man? You want to give away
Not
our
one
strats?
that's streamed. It makes no sense because people will just watch your VODs and then
Yeah,
your
but who the
strats are
fuck
wasted.
cares, dude? It's all for fun anyway. Or $400 per person at most.
Well, apparently the Tempest guys is some like Papega cringe mentality a few nights ago. Apparently they like scrimmed north and they got bodied. I was like, okay, why'd they get bodied? And it was like, well, they weren't using any strats because they didn't want to leak their strats.
Yeah, that's what a lot of teams do right now, and I'm just like...
So I gave them a firm talking, and it's like, the fuck is the point of a scrim if you're not...
If you're gonna hide your strats, they're gonna get shown in the league anyway when it's streamed in front of every single person who cares. So like,
It's not even that. Like, if you're gonna have strats, you have to fucking practice them.
and
Like,
scrims are for practice. So
yeah. So I gave them a little talking.
dude, I
It's
feel like there comes a point where there's... Actually, I don't want to even go there, but I think some people have a self-defeating mindset about the comp scene.
Yeah. Well, no, that's definitely like a yeah, it's a cringe mentality. Like, oh, don't stream our scrims.
It's like, we're all doing this for fun because there's no real stakes. So if you can't have fun playing the game and having it streamed, why are you playing, man? For like League Cloud, I guess?
wait. No, there is another side to the argument, right? So again, in other esports, if a team is going to a smaller tournament before the big major or the international, they're not going to show you all of their hard work and their sick
There's
strats.
stuff on the line.
Duh. Yeah, but I mean, I agree with you when you say ego is the main currency in the Mordhau scene, which is sad but true. But the other part of that is in a competition where people just want to win, why not? Like, why would you show the best ideas you have before they matter at all?
I mean, the only way that really works is if you have practice dummies, because otherwise that means you only go into a tournament with theoretical strats that you've never actually had a chance to practice against a team. So, in my opinion...
there's also something called dry running, right? So, like, yeah, you still aren't practicing against another team, but, like, teams will dry run their strats to make sure everyone knows what part they play in the strat, so that when they do it, it still runs like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, it's just like, for me, I would much rather... Maybe I'm just ignorant and dumb about comp, but in my opinion, if you've practiced the strats and gotten them incredibly well fine-tuned and used them against teams so you know what they're going to do to counter them, then you're much better off than if you've hidden them and never used them before until the match actually happens in tournament. And you're like, alright, time to bust out the secret strat we've never done before, and then all of a sudden the other team has some counter you didn't think of before, and it's like hidden rock, paper, scissors instead of actually like trying to outplay each other. I get
To me,
that the meta...
to me, it's like a different classification. You have like strats, and then you have pocket strats, and pocket strats are like the ones you don't show anywhere. You don't show.
Yeah.
You don't show
Right,
anywhere.
exactly.
Those are the ones you like whip out in the tournament, like sup bitch, you know, like the fucking pocket strats. But I just feel like normal strats, like I don't know, dodge barrel or.
Yeah, that's not the kind of shit we hide, right? So the only thing I said is when we scrim on stream, I don't want to show the strats that we have designed on Taiga and Grad that are specifically, hey, if we're having a hard time and the team's playing well, we bust this out and it's almost a guaranteed objective win, right? What the fuck is the point of making those pocket strats, as you call them? What's the point of making those strats if you're just going to say, okay, well, I'm just going to burn it on a scrim against Tempest Academy? Like what is the and it's streamed. So not only does Tempest Academy know, there's going to be viewers, like on Rongbot's stream, he got like 40 or 50 viewers. There's going to be players from like almost every relevant team watching, and they can go back and watch the VOD. Why would you
ever
ever
sad
do
that is
that?
for a second? That when I have 50 viewers, we know that every relevant team is watching. Like,
Is that the case?
yeah, because there's only 50
Hi,
relevant
every
people.
team.
It's well, I don't know about right now, but my point is basically, if there's a scrim being streamed and there's 50 viewers, you know every team has seen it. That's the sad thing. It's like that's how small of a, that's what we're left with. It's just like the shell of what
Oh,
could have been a cool thing.
by the way, how is Tempest Academy?
You want the truth? Do you want the diplomatic answer, or do you want the?
Well, I'm not involved at all with TKA 2.0.
They have good players with a lot of potential, but they're nothing right now. But in 2 months, I think it has more raw potential than the original. But right now, it's nothing. But that's to be expected. I think. I think that was the goal.
But it's like Tempest Academy. They going like in the Venatus tourney, they were literally pointless. Like they didn't have any weight to their name. They didn't have anything. They lost. They got knocked out of the tournament because of Entropy Mercenaries, which is the Entropy B team. And then in the MCL, which was about a month later, they were one of the best teams in Mordhau. It's almost like they like. Obviously, you guys helped them hit Mordhau puberty along the line, and I would assume the same sort of thing would happen here if the same like formula is used. So to judge them off where they are now is kind of pointless considering it was such a new thing, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not really involved in this new edition of Academy, but I do see like they're always playing. They're
That's
always
good.
playing, and they're always like in the Discord, which is a sharp contrast to TK 1.0.
Yeah.
So they seem to have really good attitudes from what I've seen, but
they have potential players too. Like so, it's hard to think about TKA because I think Tempest's idea is like they're taking mid-tier and even some decent comp players, and they're trying to build a team. They're not just picking up as sick players as they can and building a good team. So that's kind of why it's kind of a weird answer, because the original TKA, if you would have looked at them on inception, you would have been like, what the fuck is this? What's the point? But then they became decent because things develop, right? So that's why I think the current TKA could be better than, like, it could have better results than the last TKA. But right now, when we play them, they just seem very disjointed. Like there's not much like cohesive team play.
right, it's something that like generally happens with new teams.
Yeah, like
Lack of synergy.
In the VODs, there's like from Skills' point of view, you hear them like one guy has one idea of what they're doing wrong and what they should do. Somebody else has another, and they end up just kind of not doing anything.
Oh, Skills streams the comms.
He streamed it once, yeah.
Oh, that's not good. That's not good.
Well, I mean,
Uh-oh.
yeah, whatever. It's like
They're brand new, so
suddenly
I don't
Tempest
think the
Academy are
expectation-
not in the running for the prize pool in the league. Oh no, I'm so sad for them. Like, whatever. I don't know. I guess I've just started to develop toxic apathy towards the scene, and I just need to stop because it's definitely not the majority opinion. I just feel like the amount of time I invested into it was too much, is what I'm realizing. I should never have agreed to put as much into it as I did, and I guess I'm just salty at myself. So I need to take a step back and be like, all right, you know what?
No, you
We're
just
having
gotta
fun,
change your
right?
perspective, right? Whether or not this game dies, who actually cares? That's why, like, all the toxicity and like all the shit that happens in the Mordhau community. I mean, it could get you like angry and upset short term, but then you step back and like you lay down and go to sleep, and you realize, who the fuck is gonna care in 6 months? Like, if the game dies, like, what is all this gonna have mattered? Like, the fact of the matter is, I enjoy playing the game and I enjoy competing. I want to be the best that I can, you know. And so, like, if you go into the game enjoying the gameplay and knowing that like you can always get better, and you like play a lot with the intent to like get better and be the best, then the game won't really get old or boring. Like, that's kind of how I've managed to like stay active the whole time.
So, speaking of lineups, what's the ideal roster? Like, if you could just piece together a roster.
So if I were
Ooh.
okay, I'll take a shot at it. I would say Cyclone, Blonde, Ren. Who else? Probably put Croc on there. Yang for the strats, because he's done a very good job there. And then I don't know. I can't think of a sixth right off the top of my head, but that would be my starting five.
Who's the Archer on that lineup?
Oh, I guess Russian then. You could just throw him in there, but I don't know how he is on comms at all. I don't know if he's a good communicator or if he's just a good shot.
Okay.
You can
To
always,
me,
J-Skill's
Archer's-
always safe because I've heard he's a decent shot caller and he's good on Archer. He's good enough to where you're never going to have an issue running him.
Archer is it's interesting in Invasion. So like, I think like an Archer Rat hybrid is most effective from what I've seen. Like, I haven't played against North, as I said, and I don't even know how often they run Russian Mafia, but the only map that's really strong for Archer, in my view, I think Camp is pretty strong, and I think Grad can be strong just because they have to cover such a wide open ground. But I would think Cyclone, Ren, Blonde, and a sleeper pick who I think would be good is I think Kyler from North was one of my favorite players to play with when I was there. I think he's kind of underrated. Like, he has a little bit of a gambly play style, but he's a very good teammate. Like, it's very rare that you'll watch them play or play with them, and you're like, Kyler really didn't do shit there.
Does he play Shield still?
I'm not sure. The last times I've played against him in skirmish, no, but who knows? And
It's interesting.
in
Shield,
Invasion,
surprisingly, has been not even slightly meta in Invasion. I don't know what happened. I guess I don't know if everyone just got honorable all of a sudden, or if it's actually just that bad. But nobody uses Shield for anything except giving the Warden one. That's it.
there's a lot of utility that's more useful than shield.
I mean, throughout the history of Mordhau, I've never thought Shield was team play. I mean, there was the Sputnik build, but that's like an exception.
Yeah, which became the Rob Owner build because nobody knew where he got it from.
Oh,
But the thing about Invasion is, like, on certain maps, I've learned that smokes on every player are pretty key, depending on the objective. Fire pots on almost every player is pretty key on some objectives. So not only are shields kind of lackluster, the only thing they're really good at is 1vxing for a long time, but there's utility that you can run that is just more useful than shield, I think.
Yeah, I mean, also I believe shield now it just limits your mobility to the point where unless you what I did is I just kept it on my back until you actually get to the fight and then you take it back out, which didn't seem that crazy to me, but whatever. It just seems like the benefits gained by using the shield, it limits you to a shorter range weapon, except for short spear has the same range as greatsword, but even then your slash is pointless, so you're kind of I don't know. I value range more than defense because all the things you can do with shields can be done just more difficult without one, right? So you don't
Well, it's just the amount of utility you lose by using a shield. It's just
right. You're
the
paying more points to buffer
opportunity
your
cost.
defense.
Yeah.
It's kind of like yes, you'll survive longer to 1vx if you take two players of equal skill and give one a shield, but at the same time, it's points being spent to buffer your defense where you could spend them on utility. So I guess that makes sense.
Has anyone done double archer?
Yeah.
I know Darkstar has done true archer, J-skill build with a crossbow rat, simultaneously. But
I was
Okay.
inspired by
different
the
roles.
Crossbow
sniper.
rat is just man at arms, basically. I mean double archer in the sense double archer.
No.
No one's done that?
No, because at the end of the day, it's unless you have J-skill and Russian Mafia, I don't think the damage output is enough to overcome 4v6 on the objective, because what happens, let's take Grad first objective. Let's say that the attacking team pushes the farm.
Well, I was
If you
thinking in
have-
camp. I never really thought it'd be good on Grad or Tiger, just on camp.
That's fair, yeah. So I think double archer on camp might be viable on defense, specifically against... Well, actually not even then, because you have to still fight for the cart. And the way it works in this game is if you're contesting the cart, you're pushing it. It's not like Chivalry where it's you have to have the advantage on the cart. So on Chivalry, if you had two people on the cart and only one defender there, you make progress. But if you have one guy on the cart and one guy defending, then it doesn't make progress. In this game, you get progress no matter what, I think. So I think at that point, 4v6 is just such a massive disadvantage when you have to fight on an objective. You know?
you do. So I have to correct that a little bit. You do make it does wait if it's tied. However, if you have even one man up, you make progress. Whereas in traditional payload games, you don't make any progress unless there's nobody contesting. So it's
Okay, yeah.
if it's a 5v6 on the cart, the team with 6, if they're attacking, makes progress, which just feels horrible. Whereas in Overwatch, you don't make any progress unless there's nobody on the cart. So you have to completely win the fight and then move on.
Yeah,
On
so
top
that's
of that,
actually even worse for my example
Yeah.
if you think about
yeah,
it,
no, I
because
agree
then
with you.
yeah, so like the archers just become an even bigger hindrance then, unless they somehow kill 2 people, which is not likely with the damage of the bows in this current state. But I do think crossbow bastard sword, that's a setup I like to run on quite a few maps, because talk about grab, second objective for a good example. A lot of times it's my job to defend the commander as well with like 2 builders, and basically what you can do is like you can shoot 2 or 3 people before they ever even get close, and so all of a sudden 3 people are half HP, and if they're running big weapons or low armor, which is common in invasion, I'll just shoot their unarmored legs and get 60 damage on people consistently, you know. And the crossbow's got good not muzzle velocity, but projectile speed. So like hitting decently long range shots is like pretty easy. So like Archer does have a place. It's just not in the traditional sense, really. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean that's like the original reason I took the crossbow is because I was like, hey, I'm not an archer. I can't really hit people.
Yeah.
I need the easiest. I need the easiest weapon.
Yeah.
So
I
I
would
just chose
actually.
crossbow.
I haven't played with Anstey in a while, but I feel like he's also a bit of a shadow pick in the scene as far as good archers go. Like, he's really good on the level of what you'd see. Also, what he does really well is he runs utility loadouts very well. So he's also quite good in the melee compared to a lot of other archers. So like J-Skill and Russian, as good as they are with the bow, if you give them a proper melee weapon and tell them to like fight you, they're just gonna fall over. You know, like they're not on the level of a lot of the top comp players. Whereas Anstey, if you corner him, even with a cleaver, he's a significant threat you have to deal with in the melee. Like he's very good at that sort of thing. So for me, the best archer doesn't necessarily equate to the most accurate. Sometimes it equates to knowing. Like I know J-Skill did a good job at this, even though he wasn't necessarily fantastic in the melee. In the MCL, he would run the dagger, and then if ever the team tried to ignore him, he would be very good at switching to the dagger and then charging in to hit them in the back for free damage, or like placing himself in a position where he kind of walks the line of if you try to single him out, then he's close enough to where he can barely get back to his team and then you get punished. But then if you leave him alone, then he knows to wrap and that sort of thing. So it's like that's the kind of skill I value from a good archer more so than just who can get the DPS.
So here's a question. Anstey's on Nemesis. How come I haven't heard Nemesis mentioned once?
Because I have never seen Nemesis play, as unfortunate as it is. We're supposed to, or I
We
say
have a scrim tomorrow at
Darkstar is scrimming
9:30.
them tomorrow. That'd be that we'll get a chance to see him. They have a lineup that's good. Like they have Isorial, they have Anstey, they have a couple other good names. I don't even know who entirely who's on the roster, which I kind of feel bad about, but I'm sure they're pretty good. There's no way they couldn't be with the lineup.
Yeah,
they
they've
have.
got a decent enough lineup that like they can at least be top 5. Like there's no way they're not top 5.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I'm a little curious. I haven't heard from Killa or Hydra in a while. I don't know what they're doing.
So Hydra kind of hates invasion, and they don't scrim it much. Like, Ron, do you remember up until like a week ago when we hadn't really put any thought into invasion? We were just kind of playing it with like the brain dead mentality of like, oh, our mechanics will be fine.
Yeah.
That's the stage Hydra's still in. They think that all the strats are cheese, which is like words that I used exactly. But I told them like once you take a look at the strats and you like you record yourself scrimming and you see your mistakes, you'll realize that invasion plays out similar to like it's like a mix between Counter-Strike and Overwatch to me. Like there is legitimate strategic depth and map control and rotations, and that's what I like about it. And so I hope teams like Hydra and Killa get more into it.
Yeah.
Well,
we
Hydra's
did
just a bunch
Killa.
of role players. They should like that, shouldn't they? Oh, by the way, it feels so good to be able to say that now.
Well,
Like, they're
Hydra's
just a role play team. Like, shouldn't they like Invasion?
Hydra said to me that they hate it because they don't like that you can't just be mechanically better and win. They hate it because you actually have to take into account
Other bullshit,
like,
quote unquote.
strategic. Yeah.
Yeah. I have the Zaxo told me the lineup for Nemesis is Zaxo, Isorial, Hujas, Palacier, Anstey, Colonial, and Knights. Knights, he's a very interesting case because he's a frontline YouTuber turned competitive player, which I don't think has ever happened before. But
Say that again. Wait, what?
he was a
Say that again.
he was a frontline pub stop YouTuber, and now he's a comp player, which I think is very interesting. Like he would consistently
like
drop.
a big YouTuber or what?
Yeah, he's got a couple thousand subscribers from Mordhau and stuff like that. But yeah, he would consistently drop like 100 kill games in frontline, and then was like, I guess I'll try out this comp thing, and he wasn't terrible. So now he's on Nemesis.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Well, you know, if you think about it, Hydra is actually basically VQ.
Yeah, I feel like VQ split and became Destiny and Hydra, and then Destiny kind of merged with North. So now North and Hydra have like the DNA of VQ, from what I understand. Because I know Blink was on VQ. I don't know who else was, but like they were a part of that thing.
Smells like nerds in here.
Oh, hey.
We
Puzzle.
actually
Imagine being a roleplay team and not liking Invasion.
Killa A is an interesting team because if you remember, Killa A had some decent results at the MCL, but from what I've heard, like their actual good players, their A lineup has like fractured into a bunch of different little Killa teams, and I'm so confused. Every time I talk to a Killa, I get like a slightly different story, and I'm so confused as to what they're doing because Killa A was genuinely like decently talented, and they could have done something, but
Well, aren't they doing like 20v20s and shit? Like,
Killa did one
I
earlier
don't-
today. Yeah, I saw it on stream, and that was actually fun. I jumped in just for fun, but I don't know if that's like what their comp roster is doing.
Well, we scrimmed them on Invasion, and even before we started studying Invasion and actually trying to innovate and be strategic, like even when we were just like using our skill to try to carry us, they were unimpressive. I mean, it seems like they've kind of crumbled a little bit. Like I've heard that their A team got split into like 2 different teams, right? Like from what I've seen, Killa's C team, they call it, is better than their A team.
Really?
Yeah, well, their C team has Bisbo, Babkins, and yourself, which is like 2 of their best players.
That's their C team?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're doing one of those memes where like the
They split
rankings
up
of
their
their
best
teams
players or
don't represent their
you,
skill.
You guys
I don't
know that one old guy in Game of Thrones. That's really bad because there's a lot of old guys. It's
No, that one.
old
though.
white guy. I think he like controls some kind of gate.
Gates?
They like fish.
Hodor? No, I'm kidding.
No. He's just like a total asshole, and he kind of just reminds me of like Retsnom. Not that he's like an asshole. I mean like he's like
Shade
that
throw.
old. No, not like that. I mean like in the sense that he's that old guy, and even though like he's completely useless, he needs a spot on the team.
Oh my.
Is that what Killa is?
Killa. Retsnom does not play for his comp team. He realizes that he's not very good and stepped back. So that's kind of a false analogy. He runs stuff, or I think he runs stuff. I don't actually know what exactly he does, but he definitely does not take a spot on the team just for the sake of being there. That's not a thing. I mean, Killa, to be frank with you, they've been around for 14 years somehow, and that would have been an issue they would have had to have confronted a long time ago, and it would have had to have been resolved at some point along the line. There's no way it could have been just like, oh, now that Mordhau's out, Retsnom isn't as good. Guess we're gonna have to like keep him on the team even though he's bad. Da 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 da. He actually, it's interesting though. Retsnom has been on a bit of a campaign to become better at the game recently, which I thought was interesting. And I basically told him, I was like, dude, you're old enough now to where you're at a biological disadvantage as far as like reaction times and things go. You have like these 14-year-old Zoomers with like Zoomer reflexes that are gonna come in here and seem like they're on cocaine, and it's just like.
I will say though, it's impressive to me that a man in his 50s is as decent at the game as he is.
Yeah, no,
like,
I agree.
I'll come back when I'm 50.
you're like 17, bro. You like what the fuck?
Yeah, I'll be back. Don't fuck it. I'll be
He's
back.
coming back.
Mordhau 4, guys, coming in 2045.
Don't worry. Maybe your
I
kids.
find
can
that
play this-
interesting though that you mentioned. What is it? 14 years?
Yeah.
That's kind of like. I can't-
Literally,
I'm pretty
listen
sure-
to me, listen to me. Killa is older than Yokai. Let that sink in. Killa is older than Kronk. I'm pretty
No,
sure Killa
I-
is older than Jay.
I
like-
just find it interesting when people use that like argument. Like people did the same thing with Tempest. Like, yeah, Tempest has been around since the early days of Shiv. Well, it's like we have a lineup that consists of basically no Shiv players. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
It's
But
there-
Tempest
it's
players
just
have
a
been playing
name.
together for a long time, though.
Well, okay. Let's actually analyze that. The 3 core people that have been all playing together. Okay, well, let's just first like define the ideal roster. Okay, the ideal roster is Shug, Cyclone, Goat, me, Mac.
Is Quasi there? I don't know.
Who am I missing? I'm missing someone. Hold on, let me go back in. Shugs, Goat, Cyclone, me, Mac. Who the fuck am I missing? Anyway, that's besides the point. The 3 that have like been playing the longest are me, Goat, and Shugs. Mac and Cyclone, relatively speaking, have not played with us for that long.
I think Mac Daddy is actually one of the most underrated players.
Yeah, I think Mac
in
and
the
Cyclone
NA.
were both great pickups for Tempest. Good.
Yeah,
good
but
choices.
Cyclone gets the credit he deserves. Everyone knows he's sick, but
Well,
no
Cyclone's
one ever
the most-
talks about Mac Daddy, I don't think, and I think he is legitimately like one of the best quote unquote support players in the game. Like I put him up there close to Blonde. I think Blonde probably is a better player, but I think Mac Daddy is an insanely good player, and I think he should get more credit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, like anyone on that ideal roster, like, okay, I guess the ideal. I was confused. I was like, why am I missing a 6th person? It's because like the standard was 5v5 or whatever. So that was like the ideal.
I guess you would throw
It was-
Anstey or J skill on the end as like an archer utility, but
Right.
and I
But
would actually.
literally, I would not have any other lineup.
Yeah,
to me,
I
that's
think
the most ideal lineup.
Anstey and J skill they both drive a hard bargain because you have somebody who's a threat in melee and on the archer, and you have somebody who is just one of the best utility around archers ever. Like I don't even know who I would choose because like I would rather fight Anstey in a duel, but I would rather have J skill on my team as an archer.
I
if
disagree.
that
I'd
sort
rather
of thing.
fight J Skill in a duel. I mean.
Oh, sorry,
think
no, I would
Anstey's
rather. Yeah, no,
melee
no,
is
I
decent.
meant that. Yeah, I would rather avoid Anstey in a duel. Is what I meant to say. Excuse me.
Yeah, okay,
I misspoke my words. Thank you for the clarify. Yeah, I think Anstey is more of a threat in duels, and I would be more scared of him than I would J skill. But at the same time, J skill does a very, very good job of walking the line and playing the archer role to a T. Like,
He's the best archer in the game, period.
yeah, he's the best archer.
NA and EU considered.
Well,
So-
he doesn't have archers, do they? Like, do they have an archer player?
Well, yeah, right. Yeah, so he's the best in the world at archer, I'd say.
Don't forget about OCE, dude. They have some.
all 12 of them that play.
I remember that one I casted that one weekend, and oh my god, they're something else.
Django versus
Yeah,
Wizardish
so-
first to 10 win. We gotta see it, dude.
Yeah, who's the best over there?
I think it's Jangle. If I'm there's a team called Conquest that's as dominant as Tempest relative to the
Yeah,
OCE scene. Granted, it's smaller, but
I casted them. I remember.
yeah. I think they're called Conquest. I hope I'm getting the name right, but I know it's CQ. But they have apparently there's 2 players who are like tied for the best, and they're both in that team. So it'd be like if Rin and you were on the same team, type thing. Not even to say that you guys are tied, but like that's the conversation, right? Is that you 2 would be in consideration for the best. Nacho and Django, that's who it is.
I would say me and Cyclone, but yeah, I get the point.
Cyclone, yeah, I don't know. Cyclone, here's the thing about Tempest is they kind of keep to themselves. Like they won't go out. Like you don't find Tempest players just hanging out in a duel yard where you can go test your metal against them, right? So unless it's like in a tournament where you watch, and then even then, I would say the way Tempest plays, with the exception being maybe your 1vx, and then that's the only thing that really jumps out to me. Like it's hard to put a finger on exactly what makes Tempest work so well from the outside, watching just the scrim, especially if it's in like an overhead view. But
I'm willing to bet it's the culture and the team. Like
Well,
I'm
sure,
willing to
but I'm
bet that they
saying-
have really good like teamwork and
yeah,
like strategic minds.
It's
I'm
just-
willing to bet that's the
yeah.
difference.
Tempest, the way they play, does not set up for hero moments. It sets up for victory. So it's difficult to then say, "Wow, that was a great play from Cyclone. He sticks out in my memory now." You know what I mean? It's kind of just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, they won 7-0 again. Oh well." All right,
Except
cool.
for Wizardish. I mean, obviously he had
Well,
some great moments. but-
That's why like no, you're right. That's why like well, in my opinion, they don't get the credit that they deserve simply because what they do can't be seen or isn't seen.
Well,
Correct. I
the way we should choose who the best players are. By the way, I don't even like the discussion about best players really because
I do
ultimately,
now that I'm
I-
retired.
I-
I love it. I love it. It's
I
great.
care about the best teams and like how to win. You know, like
Mhm.
but the way you should measure the best players, if you have to, is like the impact they have on their team and how good their team is. So like that's why I've always thought Ren is better than Cyclone because I can't imagine North being anywhere near as good if Ren wasn't such a dominant player. But I can imagine a Tempest without Cyclone with Wizardish. And I can imagine them still being the best, you know. And that may be because I haven't seen Cyclone play without being overshadowed by you, but that's just the experience I have. Hopefully that makes sense. Like I feel like that's a pretty like reasonable way to look at it.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing I tell them from day one is that scoreboard. I don't know if other people have this mentality, but scoreboard. You know, everyone's like, yeah, scoreboard. It doesn't tell the whole picture. Literally, scoreboard doesn't matter. It's literally not relevant at all. In no circumstances, scoreboard ever.
Well, to
relevant.
some people it is because as we've said, ego is like the driving currency.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess for some teams it might be. It's just the way that we play. Which
It's like-
I guess it would take a long time to explain, but
Yeah.
like with the way we have things set up, scoreboard literally doesn't matter. It actually doesn't give you any insight as to what people are doing. Actually, it's usually the lowest fraggers that are having the most impact.
Yeah, it's like anecdotally, this is completely unrelated, but basically I had a 2v2 that I did a couple of nights ago with a friend of mine named Cashmate, and for me, the scoreboard would tell you that I was doing trash, but my experience was he's a better player than I am, my teammate was, and I was able to stay alive long enough and just stall them out where I could to enable him to play his game to the best of his ability, and sometimes that's enough, right? Like, your role is to do what your team needs to do to succeed, less than it is to dominate the opponent, in my opinion. Not to glorify what I was doing or anything, like obviously he's a better player, but I'm saying like, if it leads to the victory, for me I'm like, okay, well then it worked, and good job, right? Beyond, man, they just shit on him, or like, that was close, or I don't know, the different degrees of victory for me.
Well, like for example, Mac and I are usually the ones top fragging, but we're actually like the least relevant. Like the most relevant are the core, what I call the core, the 3 Shugs, Go, and Cyclone. They literally have more impact than both of us. Now part of that is because we're playing support, right? Like we're just, it's fucking brain dead, playing the easiest thing you can play. So that's part of it. But I kid you not, like the team is more dependent on those 3 than on the 2 of us. Or I guess it would be the 3 of us, whoever the third person is.
I don't know. I do think that like you undervalue what you brought just because you are very big on your boy Cyclone, but when like from a person who wasn't in Tempest and was someone who played against Tempest, you're the only person that anybody looks at and says like, oh shit, it's 1v3 and it's him. And also, I know like you would play frontline a lot and you would just literally hoof it in there and run into the enemy and not give a shit and like run right through people. And if you have a player who runs like through the opponent's, I don't want to say line because that's like a formation meme, but like run through their line basically where their team is, then that alone is like so impactful. And the fact that like, yeah, and the fact that like you're like the hardest player to kill quickly, like I think you underestimate your value because you want to be supportive of your boys. But
well, no, I just don't think that my value is in like. I don't think it's mainly in melee, even though that's what the vast majority. I think here's the reality: like if they didn't have me, they'd probably be playing Shiv or probably just not playing Mordhau. They'd probably be shitters. So I think my value is in me getting them to that point rather than me like fucking killing people in a team fight.
Thank you for the follow,
And the thing is, the 1vx or whatever, like sure, I'll admit.
Thank you for the follow, Jay.
None of them have that kind of 1vx, but at least like with the way we play, we're not really trying to depend on that. And so
yeah, and
the 1vx becomes a luxury, not a necessity.
And the thing is too is like, no matter how sick you are at 1vx, even you cannot win a 1v2 or 1v3 against good players consistently because 1vx is so terrible in this game that even if you play it to the T as perfectly as you could reasonably play it, your odds of winning it are so minuscule.
Which I think is fine. You know, that Gira and I actually we agree on like nearly everything, but our views on 1vx are completely opposite.
What would be your view versus his?
Well, he thinks 1vx is dog shit. He thinks it should be better. I think it's fine. If anything, you should take away mechanics because if you're going up against 2 similarly skilled opponents, you should just never win that ever, basically.
So you're saying
That's my philosophy.
So you're saying just give up? Like
No, I'm not saying give up.
You see a 1v2, you're just like, well, GG.
Yeah, I'm just saying like on paper, if we're really getting into these like optimizations of, oh well, if you're against these really good players, it's like, yeah, if I am, then I probably shouldn't be winning those.
You don't think there should ever be a point where it's like if you... So you're saying... Okay. It's a little bit unfair...
Let me give you like an easy way. So and I think Gira is the one that coined this, and so I just took from it. He said, if there were two, so speaking from his perspective, from Gira's perspective, he said if there were 2 clones of me, I would be able to win some 1v2s. Like a 1
That's not true.
versus 2 of me. That's what he said. He said he would be able to win some.
So I agree
And
with
I say I wouldn't be able to. If I had to 1v2 2 clones of me, I would lose 100% of the time.
Yeah, but the thing is though is if the best player in the game can't reliably win a 1v2 versus mid-tier comp players, like let's take for example Cyclone, okay? Tempest Academy was doing 1v2 drills the other day in their server with a lot of players from a lot of teams, and Cyclone can't. Well, he can, but he can't realistically consistently win versus like I don't want to say anybody because it's like degrading in a way, but even like from mid tier to lower tier teams, 2 players from that team will beat Cyclone in 2v1, and it's like if he plays it really really well and parries everything and manages his stam well and has good footwork, I think it should not be so impossible for a really good player to outclass 2 players in a 1v2. But in this game, it's like you have to play it very well and they have to make a big fuck up.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely have the minority opinion, and
well, let me pitch another.
part of it is, yeah. Go ahead.
Another thing I wanted to pitch to you is what if this is the thing that I'm more interested in. What if you're in a 1v2 with 2 clones of yourself, except both of them are at 10 HP? Then what? Should that be winnable?
Should it be winnable?
Yes.
Well, see, we talk about should as in like should the game allow for that?
Should the game? Yeah. Should you have the advantage or the disadvantage in that situation? You're going up against 2 guys that are 1 shot and you're at full health, and you have like equivalent loadouts.
Do we just want to like? Okay, like under how the current game operates, and under like off of knowing myself, I'd still lose 100% of the time. Being
and
the
you,
one.
And you think it should stay that way?
I think so.
But
it's on faulty logic because this is why I don't like this example, because we're saying literally cloning 2 of me. Okay, but that's not the reality of the game. Like people have different skill sets. There's never like you can say similarly skilled, but similarly skilled it can mean a whole bunch of different things. Like
well, then we should stop talking about the clone thing, right? That's the issue. So
well, yeah, I was using the clone thing to explain my philosophy. I don't think it's actually a good thing to.
Yeah, it's not.
Sure. So then, let's say, okay, 3 players of equivalent skill, roughly. Yes, there are different skill sets. Yes, whatever.
Okay, so take Wizardish in his prime is stuck in a 1v2 versus Jay from North and let's say Morning. Okay, so they're both decently. They're both like pretty close to Wizardish, but he's still better. And let's say he plays it super well, right? Almost spotless. And well, let's just say even Jay is that 1 hit. He's 20 HP, okay?
Yep.
The current way the game works, he will lose that probably like 85 out of 100 times. Maybe even more, right? But like in Chivalry, for example, and Chivalry was terrible in many ways, right? So I'm not saying we should just copy Chivalry, but in Chivalry, he would probably win that like maybe 30 out of 100, maybe 20. And so like the thing is just like at a certain point it's nearly impossible to win a 1v2 versus players that are close to your skill level, even if you're like significantly better. If they're just competent and have defense, they will win.
Well, and this is where maybe my ego shines a bit, bias shines a bit, but I guess I win enough 1vx where I don't see it as a problem. I mean, I'll just admit, like, because I win so many, I don't ever experience it as being a problem. And like, whenever I lose a 1vx, I always think I fucked up. Like, and part of that too is like that's the mindset I try to have. So maybe it's not always practical, but generally speaking, after a 1v2, it's like it's never a feeling of like, oh, there's nothing I really could. Like, I always feel like I could have done something better. And oftentimes it's very obvious where I fucked up, and it's not very forgiving. Like, I'll be like, damn,
no, I get it. It's like
I lost off of like a very small thing, but you know to me, that's beautiful. Like, that's what it takes.
So you're just saying, like, because a perfect playstyle could win 1vx consistently against imperfections. Actually, no. The way the game is set up now, if you have a 1v2 against perfect players, like 0 mistakes, the one player actually wins every time because he gains stamina on double parries, which is kind of interesting to think about. So, like, with perfect playstyles, it does actually favor. So, like, within human limitations, this is kind of philosophical, but, like, within human limitations, it actually does benefit the one player because of the mechanics. But the issue is, for the comp scene, you can't balance for the best player in the game. You have to balance
and
for...
also
That's fair
good
enough.
players are never going to feed you double parries. Like, any good, like, just for the sake of discussion, if me and Kronk are 2v1ing someone in skirmish, just for the example, I have Spear, he has Great Sword or Exy, he's not just going to be slamming his weapon, and I'm just not going to be stabbing. He's going to be, like, feinting when the guy's looking at him, and I'm going to be stabbing when he's not looking at me. And when the guy's looking at me, I'm going to be missing spear stabs or even feinting them. Like, so even that breaks down as soon as you consider that, oh, the two aren't completely retarded. So, like, if you have two players who are good comp players, they will almost never lose a 2v1. Almost. Which some people will say that's how it should be. It's a two versus one advantage, but I just think, like, if you play it perfectly or very close, there should be a route into a 2v1. But I guess there is a route. It's so freakishly rare.
Yeah, but then again, it's like, when we talk about perfect play, you also have, like, perfect reading. I know it's kind of redundant, but if we're making the argument that, like, Wizardish never makes a mistake, or not never makes, that's the wrong wording. He doesn't have a problem with 1v2 because he's able to win them consistently. You could even attribute that to things like some inhuman ability to read stabs and things like that, where it just gets funky. I don't know.
And I don't think Wizardish would even claim that he could 1v2 consistently against anyone on North, Darkstar, Uwu, or Nemesis. Like, I don't think it's possible for any player to do that.
Not,
but
well,
if you
what do
win
we
them-
mean by consistently?
Like, you.
Because my
you wouldn't-
definition, I would say no. I would say no.
You wouldn't win it more than 1 out of 10 times or 2 out of 10.
Oh, I disagree then. I think my percentage is a bit higher than that. For me,
Well,
what
if you had to
consistent would
guess,
be,
what is it?
well, for me, my definition of consistent would be like above 50%, and so I say no. I'd say, I mean, it's very hard to say, but and it's honestly it's because it all jumbles, right? Like, it's like, oh, I scrimmed this team, I won. But anyway, I'd say like
Granola Ninja, thank you for the raid, dude. I appreciate it, man.
percent. That's the number I'd give it.
30?
So you think you'd win? So just so I understand, you think you would win three
Three out
in
of
your
10.
prime in practice? Okay, 3 out of 10.
Here's the thing,
See,
though.
like-
It depends too, right? Because if we're doing like, and this is why I have a hard time putting a number on it, but you know, if it's just like 1v2 drills, right? So you're on pit and you just spawn both players full health. You know, there's no real pressure on them or anything. They're just kind of there. That is much harder to win than in like a more natural situation, or if someone, you know, it doesn't even have to be like a significant thing. You were citing earlier like 2 clones of me on 10 HP. It doesn't even have to be that significant. Even just having like 1 hit on someone is much, like, drastically easier to deal with than like if they're both full health. So it really depends on the situation.
It's like a 2v1 duel versus a 2v1 in team fight are two very different things, basically. That's what I've always said is, like,
Right.
even duels in team fights are very different because I can, like, fake switch
they
or
are.
footwork towards my teammate or things like that, even though it's a one-on-one fight, right? It's just like, that's why, like, I'm literally trash when it comes to mechanics relative to comp players, but in a team fight, I can use tactics to stall long enough to where either my teammates can help or I can wait until their back's turned, or just, like, there's more mind games allowed. Not even mind games. There's
And it's
more-
not even that too. Like, players will fight differently. Take the same 2 players, make them in a duel server, and then take the same 2 players in team play and make them duel, and they will still fight differently because in team play you don't have the luxury of using every single mechanic that you
Yeah, that
possibly
happens.
can and burning all of the stamina that you can. You
I
have
was
to
a
have
part of
enough
that.
stamina.
Yeah, I was a part of that experiment because basically I first attend 2 guys just for fun, named Smile and Diamond, right? And then they challenged me to a 2v2, and in that, even though, like, teammate was better, whatever, there were definitely times where I did better against them in a 1v1 in the team fight than I did in a first to 10 scenario, just because they're like, it's more difficult for them to have the time to just use mechanics that are like, I don't know, beautiful cucumber drags and stuff like that. Yes, those get used, but it's like there's just a difference in the psychology and the scenario that makes a difference in the fight.
Yeah, and another thing that Zaxo pointed out that is very true too, the way you win 1v2s and skirmish specifically, but it really applies in anything, is a 1v2, like a successful 1v2, is where you buy enough time for your teammates to rotate and help you. So I mean, I guess it's not a huge issue. I don't want 1vx to be as easy as it was in Chivalry, but I want it to be a little less impossible as it is now.
Wizardish, have you played around with the repost into chamber mechanic at all?
No. I haven't had it happen yet.
Yeah, I had it happen once a day, and it was super satisfying, but I cannot say that it was truly intentional. I realized what was happening and then went with it as it was happening. But it wasn't like I saw a guy do an LMB and another guy do an overhead. I was like, all right, I'm gonna parry this overhead and riposte into a chamber on the LMB. It's like, yes, it's theoretically possible, but it just seems like...
Well, yeah, I remember reading it, and I just thought, like, it doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, it's like the player skill... I don't know. It's not reasonable to expect that to be a buff to 1vx.
Here's what I will say, though, about 1vx. And again, maybe a bit of bias, but I think, and well, you know what? It's not even true within Tempest, but I think in this game at least, people just don't 1vx properly. Like, they just don't know what to do. What I see so often is people just sit there, and they're sitting there. It honestly boggles my mind. And honestly, like, sometime I'd love to just like analyze a bunch of 1v2 clips and point out like why people are so shit, because it actually tilts me so much. But it's like people just sit there as the one and they just wait.
Yeah, I know.
It's like they're just
I'm
like
guilty of that,
waiting.
but I know it's wrong when I'm doing it.
They're just waiting for like the two. They're like praying, please, to mess up. I'm just gonna stand here. I'm not gonna punish anything. I'm not gonna proactively do anything. I'm just gonna pray that you fuck up. And so many. I don't know. It tilts me. And even within Tempest, like Mac, probably. I'll say like Mac, the only other person that has really good 1vx skill, I would say. Oh, actually Blonde, and that's what made me differentiate him from like other North players, is that he had really good 1vx sense. Cyclone as well, but the other Tempest guys struggle with it a bit. Goat did as well, mostly because he was really good at backswinging. But yeah, I mean, even within Tempest, like Shugs, Mac, it's a hard mindset to get out of. I don't really know like why it happens, but people just, I don't know how to explain it. People just sit there.
Well, I can explain it. It's because in Shiv, that was the correct thing to do, because you would get a double parry, then all of a sudden you had initiative, whereas in this game you don't, so you're supposed to take initiative yourself, in like the literal sense.
That's not why either, though. It has nothing to do with Shiv, in my view. I think the reason is because if you, so like, one thing that Wiz does well in 1vx that a lot of players don't, and like, I've tried to work into how I 1vx, is like, as he says, people will just be like, look at these double parries. I can double parry all day long. I can read. But what you should be doing is like, you should parry, start an attack, and then feint to parry the second one if you have to. Like, you have to squeeze in an attack at every little opportunity you can, and then feint to parry out of it if you have to. But what you'll see a lot of other people do is, as he said, they'll just sit back and they're like, I'll just wait on my turn. But if you don't take initiative, you won't get it. Like, you have to force your initiative, and I think that's kind of what he's talking about.
The biggest thing from what I've seen is just how people move, or rather, the lack of movement. And honestly, I could sit here and give like a 2-hour lecture on it, but yeah, people just tend to not move, and that's kind of what I mean. Is like, people will just backpedal. They'll let themselves get sandwiched. They won't move. They won't pivot. They won't do anything proactively. They kind of just sit there. They wait for a parry. They don't really punish feints, maybe because they're not capable of doing that in that situation. But I don't know. I'd have to get like some clips to point out exactly what I mean. But that's one thing I've noticed about 1vx, and that's why I'm so skeptical to just say like, yeah, 1vx should be easier. Because I'm of the personal opinion that people just don't play it correctly.
Yeah, I have opinions like that on other stuff. That I guess would probably end up lining up with yours, but I know when horses were talked about in like Invasion right off the bat, everyone was like, man, horses are just so broken, I don't understand why they're allowed. And I was like, I know Muff and I have had a lot of disagreements on this, but I was like, I think people just play it wrong. Like, I think it is possible to punish horseplay even against good horse players. Like, as much as there's a skill ceiling for horses that could be considered narrow, there's also a skill ceiling for playing against horses, like knowing situational awareness and where to position yourself, and I don't know, just stuff like that. Where I'm always like, I'm hesitant to just write it off as, yep, horses are broken because I can't figure out how to play against them. You know?
Wait, no, wait, hold up. Let's not make an argument that I'm not making, okay? At that time, Invasion was super new, and no one had really developed strats just yet because it was like a week into Invasion, and I said that on camp only, a good horseman dominates disproportionate like to his skill. I don't really think that way anymore, and I only thought so because like, again, Invasion was super new. Like I would never make that argument now.
Your comical timing is genius, sir.
Yeah, I don't know. My point is basically like, a lot of times I've seen players be quick to write off mechanics. Like there was a big mentality that was like, man, Invasion's just a bunch of cheese and it deletes the game and it's just not very fun. I'm like, I know Tippus was on this train early and everybody resented him for it, but it was like, why don't we? I mean, I think there's more depth to it than that. It's kind of like I made the analogy of in CS:GO. Let's say you played other shooters and you're like, man, I've got really good aim. So I'm really good at the combat system. I'm going to go in there, I'm going to shred through everyone. And then you get nailed by some noob who's using like an op on a sightline you didn't know about. And you go, man, what is that cheese, dude? Like, this game isn't balanced. What the hell was that? Turns out, it's actually just a skill ceiling that you haven't yet explored. It's not really true cheese, in the truest sense of the word, you know?
Yeah.
But, I'll ask you this, Wizardish. Do you think Bear Trap should one-shot horses?
I suggested that a long time ago.
You know what I think would be interesting too?
I don't see like why they shouldn't.
What if the Wizardish alt mode one-tapped horse legs?
You said what?
What if Wizardish alt mode, like what if they added a weapon, or not added a weapon, but they added a effect of a weapon that would like counter the horse in another way than just, oh, spear's long, you'll hit him, or billhook will pull him off. What if the Wizardish or some other weapon had a buff to where if you hit their legs specifically, it like decapitates their legs or dismembers, I guess.
Matt Daddy just made another interesting suggestion, which is that fire pots should cause horses to rear up when they run towards them instead of just running through them.
That's a really good idea.
No actual
too.
horse would just run through a like fire.
Bet I have a specialized jihadi horse.
And suddenly we became political. That's fine. Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry.
It's like, I don't know. There's lots of. As fun as it is to talk about these things, we're never gonna get to see them, man.
I requested the Bear Trap one shot on
And how'd that go?
horses
They definitely
in,
listened to that good idea.
well, I suggested
Let
it
him
like way back when, like frontline. Like this was a long time ago. I don't remember on what grounds it was rejected, but yeah, it was rejected. I think it was like it was some dumb logic, like yeah, I mean it basically kills them, so just finish them off with like archery, and I'm like, it's just, no, because by the time you finish them off with archery, they're at a point where you can't actually punish the player because he's ran off. So even if you like kill his horse, ragdoll him, you can't actually kill him.
Rongwa, is it cool if we bring Arkosh in? I'm sure we'll be wrapping up soon, but
Yeah, Arkosh is a reasonable guy. I'm sure he'll be fine. Have him join the social channel. And I like Arkosh's mind on a lot of stuff too.
I like his voice. I want him to read audiobooks for me.
But yeah, to summarize the whole 1v2 thing, I don't know. I have a little sympathy because I just don't think firstly I think people don't play it correctly. Secondly, I have a lot of success in it.
I'd like to see your thoughts on how I play it, because like
Everyone.
because
Give me some,
I'm
give
like
me some clips.
Oh,
I-
boy. Don't open that gate on stream, Wiz. You'd be. I think you
But-
underestimate how many people would appreciate that sort
Like-
of thing.
Yeah, like so I'm just talking about me because I don't know how everyone else does it consistently. Obviously, I know how I play better than everyone else, but like I'm good at double pairing. I do what I see you do in the VODs because I like watched your VODs a lot to like learn all the little minutia that I wasn't doing back when you played a lot. And like I think footwork is what separates it, but like I don't know. It'd be interesting if you did like you know how you used to let people send you clips of their dueling and you would like break down shit. Like doing 1-for-1 VX would be really interesting because
I sympathize with the amount of work involved in that, though, just because I was like, man, all these good ideas sound like such fun to implement, and I was like, holy shit, there's like only so much time in my life to do this stuff. So I literally have been
I might do some stuff like that.
yeah, well, I mean, if you can, do it, please, because the scene will. I think people have a lot of respect for your opinion on stuff. Everybody always. It's funny when I first ever heard about you. Well, my two first experiences. Yes, all about me. I know. I get it, chat. Whatever. My first two experiences were like, I saw you in a duel server, and you just killed. You did 30-0, and you just used nothing but mace stabs. And I was like, oh wow, that guy's good. And then quickly after, I was like, man, this Wizardish guy is like enlightened when he talks about the game. I was like, what? Like enlightened? Like what does that mean?
I just heard that he played with his sound off, and I was like, what a weird.
I can't imagine doing that either.
Yeah.
Hey man,
Visual stimulus, dude.
it's better. But yeah, no. The thing about, so even if you try to replicate like what I do, it's kind of like what Rongbot said earlier about. Well, actually, I don't know who said it, but with 1vx, it's so unforgiving that just one little thing can fuck you over. And so really it just becomes the minimization of, and really the consistency, and just like avoiding stupid mistakes. It's kind of like, you know, you're taking a test or something. But, oh, math tests are a great example. I don't know like what kind of math classes you guys have taken, but at least like throughout my life, when I take math tests, usually what gets me is like I just make a bunch of tiny like stupid mistakes. Like I forget to fucking like it's
Carry
a
the
negative
one.
answer. Carry the one, or like it's a negative answer and I just forget to put the negative sign in front, right?
Right.
But I make a ton of these and they add up. So overall, like I get everything on the test. I get pretty much all the right answers, but all these small little things, or like maybe one part of my work was incorrect, or something like that. These small mistakes, they add up a lot. It's kind of, I view it the same in 1vx. Like you make one little slip up and you're just fucked, and that's the brutality of it. But that's kind of where the skill comes down, I guess, is the consistency to just
So is
not fuck up.
the appropriate response then to just be 1vx is fine because if played perfectly it's okay? Is that the consensus?
Well, if you're asking me, 1vx is fine because I can do it. That's what I would tell you.
And we're okay using you as the standard for what comp players should be expected to do?
No, I don't think he's saying that. I think
I'm
it's just
fine
an
with
opinion.
that. I mean, I don't know if other people. Well,
Like-
see, I'm realistic. I'm not claiming that I have all the knowledge, but I'm just saying from my perspective.
Yeah, well,
From my
it's
You gotta
just
think
we,
how
we can always
work
say
is
like,
to
oh
you,
well, I
right?
mean, Wizardish can do it, so why can't you, idiot? Get
Right.
better.
Yeah, but wrong, but you have to think from his warp perspective, right? There's
Warped.
nobody in NA that could even kill this guy for a while, or not with any consistency. I mean, Ren could, but you know what I mean. Like he's not used to losing or having issues. So like, his perspective is not necessarily the end all be all, right? And
Yeah, Wiz, you're stupid.
he's not even saying that it is.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get the premise. It's just like, I don't know. At whatever point we say, well, the best guy could do it, so you can too. That's like, I don't know. I've seen plenty of examples. It's like Michael Phelps could set the world record, so why can't you? You know, it's like I think it's a fallacy to compare people to the best that exists in any given scenario.
I just kind of like, I always hope that people would like strive for more, and I just have a fear that it's like, I don't want to say like people are lazy. It's just like,
no, they are. They are.
I feel like people want the game to be easier. It's like, man, go achieve the impossible. That's just my mindset. It's really a mentality thing, I think, is what it comes.
No, I agree that people. That's why I've mentioned like I don't think that anybody truly takes the game seriously besides Tempest, and it's not because people couldn't. It's because it's a choice. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I should do that. I'm kind of motivated now.
Yeah, because the game's in such an upward trajectory. All right, I'll stop being pessimistic. That's not
No, I don't know. I like talking about this stuff, I guess.
yeah. I mean, I
think it'd just be fun to watch too. Like hearing things from the best or one of the best in any field is interesting. Like
yeah. It's funny. People talk about me running this podcast. Realistically, it should be Wiz because he's the one who has the insightful opinions. I'm just a guy. But like, I don't know. It's always been interesting because there's never been an example of respectful, high-level dialogue about this game. Every time it either becomes ego-filled or like memey, and I get that it works for some people. Like memes are memes, and that's fun. But for me, I always just got kind of grossed out by it. I was like, man, I can't have a conversation in a text chat anywhere without people just spamming copy pastas and being like, haha, I'm better. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I crave the seriousness that doesn't really exist in this community, and I guess that's my own fault for ever expecting that.
No, I get it too. I wish like people would. For me, it's always been like think about the game critically, think about what you're actually doing. Like have a higher understanding of what you're doing, rather than just like,
Right.
oh, I play the game a lot. My muscle memory is pretty good.
Therefore, I'm the best, or I'm good enough to where you can't say anything that matters. It's kind of like that's one of the things that I've enjoyed about Darkstar is my mechanics and muscle memory. I'm a release player. Like I didn't even know melee session was a genre until Mordhau came out, and I spent the first month and a half of this game playing frontline like all the other normies, and then I was like, okay, this game's pretty fun. I wonder if there's any way I can like invest myself further, and then I started learning all the mechanics and stuff. So obviously, mechanically, I'm significantly behind all the people who've been doing this for decades. Not decades, but like at least 2 years or more, right? The issue being, I would like to think that I can think about the game critically. Not necessarily the best or the worst or anything like that, but the ability to think about the game critically often gets downplayed because there's a lack of mechanics. And I found that can be a little disheartening for even players who, like, are probably smarter than me, but also not as mechanically skilled as me about the game. They're instantly shut down from having an opinion. Like, well, I mean, have you ever played on a top tier team and won? Obviously, your opinion doesn't count. Like, wait,
And what's funny is people who haven't even achieved anything say that too. So they're like discrediting their own opinion. They're like, "Oh, you haven't won any money," and it's like, dude, who are you?
Yeah, well, okay, to be fair, it's like the whole thing is basically the who are you argument and the who are you mentality has always bothered me. It's like I kind of wish that a new player could come in and say, well, what about this? And instead of being, what a retard, dude, you didn't even play the game well, you're just, get off me. Like, you're not worth my time. I'd rather be, well, we found that this is why, and this is the reasoning, and we have evidence from here, and whatever. Just like, I don't know, reasonable conversation. But apparently that's not even, like, a reasonable expectation.
No, because the thing that's interesting is it was this way in Shiv too. As we said earlier, ego is the prime currency. It is like the end all be all, right? It's a very ooga booga caveman mindset in these games. That's kind of what makes it fun too, though. Like when you beat someone that shit talks, and you shit talk them, and it's like a bit of a back and forth. It's like one of the most satisfying things ever. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's just very common, I guess.
Yeah. It's just for me, in summary, I do want to kind of start to wrap things up because this is typically around the time that I would end
Like
my stream.
4 hours.
Yeah. So basically, what I would say in summary is, we talked about what would need to happen to fix the game. I said SDK because the devs haven't done a good job with the core stuff beyond the combat, the customization, and the UI. I think they did a fantastic job on that, and that's commendable. But as far as the maps and modes, I've seen issues there, and I don't have confidence in the devs to fix it, even with Castello and Fatoria. It remains to be seen. Those could be the best maps ever released, and they'll make waves in the industry. Who knows? But I don't have hope based on what I've seen, and I think the SDK would be the next best thing, operating off of the premise that the game is not going to become huge, and we're just here to have fun at this point, right? And then we talked about, is 1vx good? Wiz said, I can do it, so it's good. So we mentioned that. And then we talked about, what else? I'm just trying to think back to what the consensus was at the end of all this. Do you guys have anything to add?
No, I was just bored, got tilted off of League, so I came here.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's all it really takes, though. It's just, I don't think there needs to be a lot of fanfare to have a conversation about Mordhau. I think it's kind of funny we're at that point. Like, well, the stars align so we can have an actual conversation about the state of the game. Like, I don't know. Maybe I have unrealistic expectations because I can do it.
Yeah,
just
but
to get on the meme.
you know what's funny, Ron, too, though?
Uh-oh.
I mean,
Roasting coming.
a lot of no. There's no roasting coming, bro. What the fuck?
I smell the
A
roast, I'm sorry.
lot of people will say that like your opinion doesn't matter because you never played on like a top 2 team, top 3 team.
Mhm.
But so they put no credit into like any other thing that you've done. And so yeah, I find that interesting. It kind of like goes along with what you're saying. It's just an interesting thing. Like every day I interact with people in this community, it's interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, it's like, let's say, okay, I have 1.1k hours since the game released in this game. Obviously, I care and I'm invested. Maybe I suck and you can beat me in duels, but that should not be associated with. So I'm also dumb, like as a person, right? And I just think that mentality needs to kind of go away.
Hey man, all I'm saying is, you guys think this community is, well, let's just say whack. That's what I would use to describe it. Okay, League is, oh my god, it's so much worse.
At least they have devs, man.
I would much, well,
At least they have devs.
well, yeah, but
Don't they have like Nazi devs?
sometimes the presence of devs doesn't actually result in goodness. But yeah,
It's
I
like,
get
would you
what
rather have abusive parents or non-existent parents?
right.
Nobody knows.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, League community, it's
So in summary, Crush is my dad.
I mean, like any MOBA community is just going to be absolutely like bottom of the barrel. It just goes with the genre.
Any online
Well,
community because of the
I-
anonymity.
I don't know how it is in Dota, but in League,
No, it's very similar.
there's win trading. There's a lot of
Yeah.
kids, like under 15. It's really crazy.
Yeah, honestly, I think like just going by personal experience of like a lot of hours, like I've seen not very many kids play Dota like at all. It's really weird. Maybe because like
That's what the
they-
It's
more
because you
Yeah,
can steal
community
creep,
has
that's
going
why.
for it.
That's the only reason why.
maybe it's because like they hear about League, it's like more popular, and so like more younger audience would pick up the game. But I just
Dota
haven't
doesn't
heard
have much
many
marketing
kids.
in my experience relative to League. Maybe I'm just oblivious, but like I'll see
Well, I
League
mean-
ads on like TV, like occasionally. Whereas Dota, I've only heard about it when I looked up stuff on it. That's
Well,
about it.
yeah, and the marketing strategies are a lot different. Like Valve in general doesn't advertise for their games like at all.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
just kind of.
Yeah, I mean, Dota's just like better. So
Wiz is a smart man. Okay, I was worried a bit, but
I wish I started on Dota.
I think it's well documented that he hates League. He's locked in an actual cage and he can't get out. He's trying.
You guys see
that's
El
a
Camino?
tragedy.
El Camino's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm Jesse Pinkman in the cage.
He makes good meth and they won't let him go, man.
Yep.
So 1vx is math confirmed.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how he wins them so often. He just he hot knives the fucking line of meth.
Dude, you know what I'm gonna do now? I'm gonna go like start making some like tutorial series. So I'm gonna go do that.
That'd be sick.
Well, like not now, but I mean like you know. What I
No,
mean.
right now. You think this is a free country? You owe it to us. For some reason.
There's
I'll figure it
some
out later.
e-girls around here interested in production methods, so I kind of got my work cut out for me.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Alright, okay, well, I guess that's all I really had for today.
No.
What?
No.
Why? Because you just got here, you psycho?
Oh.
I just joined.
Well, how long have to go till 6 a.m.?
Ask Wizardish about coin flipping.
What?
Wait,
Oh,
what?
gambling?
I don't know what Nithuk means.
I'm
by
pretty sure he
this.
means gambling. I've
Gambling?
said this, gambling should not have nearly as bad of a name as it does, because sometimes you kind of have to take a calculated risk.
almost
Gambling,
has 70 viewers.
gambling is just reflective of the play to win mentality. That's what I think.
Well,
We
I
should
mean,
take
it's like
audience questions.
in 1vx, inherently, sometimes you have to gamble if they're not doing anything that they don't start wind up a millisecond before you click the button, right?
Well, here's a little sneak peek for the series. The reason why it's not really gambling in 1v2 is because the burden is on the one, whereas in the 1v1 there's no burden on it. It's very much neutral. But in a 1v2 setting, since the burden is on you to actually make something happen, I mean, I guess it like is gambling, right? Because you're doing things you shouldn't do within the rules of combat. But the problem is that's kind of thrown out the window in a 1v2 because again, it's like there's a pre-existing burden on the one player to actively do something, whereas in a 1v1 setting, there's really no such thing that exists. But that's for a we'll save that.
You gotta copyright that shit and monetize it, dude. No. Okay, in all seriousness though, I'd be psyched. The more people, I know this kind of seems completely the opposite of what I was saying, but in my opinion, the community is the only future for this game. So the more people are willing to spend any effort to change the trajectory of the game, the more happy I am. Everybody has said that this like a god complex thing, but it sometimes feels like I could be one of the few people who is willing to do stuff without being asked to try and make the scene different. And I'd love to be proven wrong. Like, I want to see a bunch of tournaments happen randomly, and I want to see guides start coming out from top tier players, and I just want to see everyone just like do stuff without it being told to or without being incentivized. Like, the USDK was a shining example of the opposite, where a bunch of players just got together. The Hades guy?
Back in the day.
I would love for everybody to just chip in their time to make the game better if they are really invested in it being a thing. That's just my perspective, though.
Unfortunately, though, the community can only do so much, and at the end of the day, it still comes down to like more content. You know, I still think free to play is like the savior.
I just think like more maps would attract so many people, like new interesting maps.
All right, boys. I need a save from yourselves.
Yeah.
We start this conversation again.
Oh,
We're gonna
wait.
say the same thing.
I wasn't here. I didn't know.
Oh my.
Yeah, it's okay. We have free. Okay, why don't we just do? All right, here's the deal. Final closer. Make it go free to play the weekend they release the SDK. Boom, done. The game saved.
Yeah.
All right, see you in 2 years when the game is ready.
The thing is, though, their sales are actually steadily increasing. Yeah.
That was disgusting. Who said that?
Yeah.
You're fired.
Yeah. Oh well, no, not no. What did they? What did he say? I'm not gonna say who said it. What did he say?
They're probably just maintaining, not increasing. There's no way their sales are going up.
Yeah, no, not increase. Well, I think when he said it, he meant increasing based off of the last.
Oh, so they went from 0 to 1. Nice one, dudes.
I'm trying to remember what the context was, but like you know, if
people want a tier list for you from us collectively.
For teams?
Yeah, for teams. That question.
teams, well,
The calls are like very soon. What's the point?
I'll give it to you three because I haven't watched enough. I don't know.
All right. Well, it's free content. If you come up with a tier list, you should do it, Wiz.
Well, I don't think.
I'll give you my player tier list.
Okay. Do
About 2 months ago.
Do it.
What 5v5 or 6v6?
Both.
5v5. Go Chug Cyclone Wizardish.
Okay,
Mac.
bud.
Okay.
Get the fuck.
No, but seriously, what's wrong with that logic?
Because they're only as good as they are. It's like they're greater than the sum of their parts. That lineup.
Okay, but that team would not be #1 if there was a different member.
Which is why they're better than the sum of their parts.
Right.
That's
so,
what I'm saying.
Like, if you like, I bet you could put Blonde in from one of those guys and you'd still see the same success.
No.
With time and team play, yeah. It would take time and synergy, of course.
Well, okay, yeah, with time, but it'd be a lot of time. Yes.
I don't know. Anyway, all right. I'm calling it here. With Arkosh, we'll do another one soon. It'll be fine. No. But okay. All right. I'm gonna definitely close down stream. You guys can hang out in here if you want. And we'll talk after. But all right. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a little This is a little experiment. I've been intrigued by the idea of doing a podcast for. Hey, Spook, what's up, man? I've been intrigued by the idea of doing a podcast for a long time in Mordhau. I was really when Wiz was like, "Hey, can we come chat?" I was like, "Hell yeah, dude! That was sick," you know. That was hype. So I'm just really excited that we've opened some sort of a dialogue or a platform for dialogue about the game, and I'm looking forward to more stuff in the future. I think Wiz would be a fantastic repeat guest on the stream just because he has a lot of insightful opinions on stuff, and I think he still has passion for the game. But I'd like to also bring in other comp players. I'm gonna, at the risk of people not being serious, I'd kind of like this to be. I know it's like a dirty thing to say in the scene, but I'd like this to be a thing people take seriously, man. I really would, because I kind of enjoy having real conversations. I hate when it just devolves into copy pastas and like who's better. But yeah, I would love to bring in more players that are willing to have a proper conversation about what's going on, and I hope to do more of this in the future. So that being said, thank you everybody so much for watching. I know I'm ending the stream with a lot of viewers, but ultimately I'm of the mindset that I'm doing this for fun, not for profit at the end of the day. It'd be really awesome if I could make a living off of this. Yes, nobody's going to ever shy away from that, but I need to have a life outside of outside of the stream. You know, I can't just stream until people don't want to watch anymore because that's like a recipe for burnout. I refuse to just try and not sell out, but I don't know, whatever. I would actually love to get Puppets on the podcast if he agreed to not say the N-word, but I don't think that's feasible, so unfortunately he probably will not be joining us. But anyway, yeah. I've been Ronguat for the stream. With me were Wizardish and Muffmeister, if you didn't know who they were. Wizardish is commonly considered the best player to ever play Mordhau. Muffmeister is a starting support player for Darkstar, and I am a coach for Darkstar. That's who we are. If you want to keep up with me and what I do, you can type !Discord and then join the Discord server. You'll get updates when I go live there, and subscribers will get updates about specific streams if they're interested. So that sort of thing happens there. If you want to see more from me, you can follow me on Twitter at Wrongwat. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Wrongwat. I'm going to put this podcast up there, just the whole thing, just so we can go back and look at it if we ever need to. I'll put a highlight up there probably within the next 2 days, so if anyone's interested, you can see the whole thing in its totality. But yeah, I have been Wrongwat. Let's see here if I can find somebody to drop a raid on here. I think that'd be a good use of resources. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the podcast today. I think we got through some good topics, and I enjoyed just kind of chilling and playing. And yeah, so let's go ahead and do this. All right. But yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are literally the best. The support the past couple days has been awesome. This also was by far my most viewed stream ever, so that's pretty hype. But yeah, you guys are literally insane. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I stream every night starting at 8 p.m. my time, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, and 3 a.m. GMT. So I've been Ronguat. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye.